rice paper plant is? All right, I'm gonna turn you. You can see it in my yard with the blossoms.
I think you'd have to turn off your background.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's probably true. Well, that's gonna get complicated. Anyway, it's a bush that normally is green in the other times, but in the winter it has little white balls on the end of all the limbs.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
they burst into flower about now. And the cardinals, which are bright red, and these are white blossoms, get in there and just pull the flowers apart for some reason. And so it looks like this rain shower every time a cardinal gets in there. It's pretty funny.
Pretty.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
that rice paper is actually in Edgeworthia,
Yes, I didn't want to be
I
too
have
nerdy,
two.
but thanks, Sabrina, for being
I have
nerdy for me.
and they have a lovely fragrance as well.
I agree with you on that. My husband would disagree with you on that.
Noses are weird, aren't they?
He says that plant stinks. And I'm like, no, I think it smells lovely. He says
It's
that
like-
about the gardenias too, so we're good.
Oh my God, those are my favorite. But holly bushes, when they bloom, are beautiful, but they're stinky.
Well, Bradford pears saying,
Yeah.
hey,
Oh,
Flo, we got
yes,
your
they're
whole
terrible.
face this time.
They're terrible. I kept wondering what that was in the park, and I kept getting closer and closer. And yeah, it was the pears.
Not good.
All right, let's see what I can do here. Video settings. Oh,
My,
This is a big crowd on this.
all right, there you go. Can you see the Edgeworthia, the rice paper plant?
a little bit. I see.
Yeah.
No, mostly I see town hall.
Yeah, we can still see your background.
Why did it not? Oh, never mind. I thought I took it off. Never mind.
I'll do the Google.
We're about 1 minute out.
Well, what did happen to my background? Okay.
Ooh, those are pretty.
Amy, Dan, sound check. Hello again.
Hello,
And this is Wendy, if you can hear me.
we can.
Hear you?
I can.
I will turn up my sound a little bit. Is that better?
Yeah.
Good.
Still missing a couple of council members.
You were missing, who are you missing? I don't see Alan.
Alan,
I don't see
Okay.
Humbin.
Ty, you're back.
There's
There's
Alan.
Alan. Welcome. Any baby news before we get started?
Nope, not yet. So,
Okay, that's good though. Yay. The longer they cook, the happier you'll be.
something like that.
All right, are we ready?
We still missing Humbin?
Looks like it.
Send her a text.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 24th, 2021 meeting of the Chapel Hill Town Council. We do have a change to the agenda this evening. We've removed item number 15, which was a discussion about police jurisdiction. We will look for that to come back at another time. There are 7 items tonight for discussion, beginning with an update on our staff, from the staff on the town's ongoing response to the COVID crisis. We'll be considering a conditional zoning application for the South Columbia Annex, along with a related closure of an unmaintained road in that area. We will be opening a public hearing for the issuance of 2/3 bonds for Parks and Rec, public safety, street and sidewalk capital improvement projects. We also will be opening 2 public hearings, one related to the Signature Health Facility on East Franklin Street, and the other about proposed changes to the Historic District review criteria. And at the end of the meeting, we'll be making an appointment to the Community Policing Advisory Committee. So council members who haven't gotten their ballots in, please do. In keeping with state protocol for virtual meetings, I will do a roll call. Please unmute yourself when I call your name and say aye, here, or present, whatever works for you. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Michael Parker.
Here.
Councilmember Jess Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Ellen Boyncy.
Here.
Councilmember Hong Ben Gu.
Here.
Councilmember Tai Nguyen.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Stegman.
Here.
And the mayor, Pam Heminger, is also here. Okay. For public comment this evening, we know it's virtual, and we're glad you're here with us, either watching virtually or via the TV channel or later at your pleasure. Through Granicus, we want public input. We encourage public input. We know it's a little more difficult during virtual meetings, but I want to explain that we will be asking you to raise your hand with the function of raise your hand, or I believe it's *9 if you're attending by phone. And Mr. Parker will call 2 of you in at a time to get you set up to speak to council. And then we'll ask you to unmute yourself and when it's your turn and speak your 3 minutes. And again, your input is important to us. We also are happy to receive emails or phone calls, however you'd like to communicate with us. We appreciate the attention of that. All right. So first up tonight, we have a resolution before us. On Tuesday, March 16th, 8 people were killed in Atlanta in a horrific shooting spree. 6 of those victims were Asian women. And as we've said before, there's no place for violence or racism in our country, and we're deeply disturbed against this violence against Asian and Pacific Islanders, especially since that's been increased by over 150% in this last year. On Sunday, people from across Orange County came together at Peace and Justice Plaza to show their support for our AAPI community. I was sorry I was unable to attend, but I know many of our council members were there to show their support. We know how devastating and frightening this event has been for so many in our community, and realize that our thoughts and prayers and condolences are not enough. Knowing that, Councilmember Boincy has brought forward a resolution in support of the Hate Crimes Prevention Act that was put forward in both chambers of the North Carolina General Assembly last Friday. Mr. Boincy, would you please read the resolution?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution from the Chapel Hill Town Council in support of the Hate Crimes Prevention Act. Whereas the Chapel Hill Town Council recognizes that there has been an increase in recent years in hate crimes against racial, ethnic, religious, and gender groups and against the LGBTQ community. And whereas the Chapel Hill Town Council stands in solidarity with the Asian American Pacific Islander community, which has recently seen a marked increase in hate crimes against its members. And whereas North Carolina's statutes currently do not require the collection of hate crimes data by law enforcement agencies, and whereas North Carolina's current statutes do not include offenses committed because of the victim's ethnicity, gender identity, gender expression, disability, or sexual orientation among the categories qualifying for elevation to felony classification. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the Town of Chapel Hill that the Council endorses and supports the passage of the Hate Crimes Prevention Act, introduced by the North Carolina House of Representatives by Representatives Nassif, Majid, Verla Insco, Marsha Murray, and Pricey Harrison, and in the North Carolina Senate by Senators Jay Chaudhry, Valerie Fushi, and Mujaba Mohammed. This the 24th day of March 2021. And I'll just say thank you for your consideration, fellow council colleagues. I think, we all stand, well, not I think, but I know that we all stand with our Asian American sisters and brothers. And this bill has been introduced in the past few years with no movement, but I'm hoping hard that this will spur certain colleagues in the General Assembly to respond and to do the right thing. Thank you.
Mr. Wunsch, you want to move the resolution?
Yes, I move R.1.
Second.
We have a lot of seconds. It's been moved by Mr. Boincy, and I'm going to say second by Mr. Nguyen. I need to do a roll call vote unless there are any other comments to be shared. Okay, Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Boincy.
Aye.
Ms. Gu. Didn't hear
Aye.
you. Okay, Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Thank you for bringing it forward. And I want to say we're also very grateful to our own local representatives, Senator Valerie Fushi, Representative Verla Insco, and Representative Marsha Murray for sponsoring this legislation. They always stand up for our community values. They're very intent on standing up and making statements and getting this legislation enacted. And I want to say how proud I am of our community as we stand together, and we want our Asian and Pacific Islander neighbors, friends, and colleagues to know that we are here to support you. Should you need help, we want you to reach out. I know several people have been very brave in telling their stories. I was on the Reimagining listening session last night and hearing some of those stories. They're very moving and very sad at the same time, but also I'm very inspired that they are willing to come forward and tell their stories, because they're letting us understand what has been going on that is not acceptable. So we are here. There's also a hotline. We can post more information about that if you're wanting to share your story or to let us know about a hate crime that you've experienced. Okay. We also have a Celebrating Successes video this evening. I think we're queued up for that. Here we go.
Chapel Hill Public Housing has had a busy quarter. Driving by our properties, you will notice a fresh, new welcome to our residents and visitors. Staff joined with residents this winter to officially unveil the new community signs. Other recent improvements include new roofs at the Craig Gomains and Lindsay Street communities. These replacements will limit the possibilities of leaks and other damaging effects of the rains we have experienced this quarter. We continue to do our part in the fight against COVID-19, including supporting our residents with information and resources. Public Housing has distributed more than 10,000 masks available for all our residents since March 2020. We have also distributed more than 15,000 boxes of food to more than 52,000 families at the weekly food bank. March 23rd marked the anniversary of moving the food bank from our public housing communities to make it more accessible and contact-free. Lastly, we are excited to announce the reintroduction of the Residents Council. This is an opportunity for public housing residents to meet once monthly and learn information they can take back to their communities and share updates or bring concerns from their communities in the interest of finding a solution that is beneficial for everyone. We look forward to the year ahead in establishing a new normal for our communities.
Thank you. I have two other successes to celebrate this evening with you. One, I hope you have seen or will shortly see the announcement about the Carolina Economic Development Strategy, or something we've nicknamed Downtown Together. Today, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and the town of Chapel Hill announced that the Carolina Economic Development Strategy, a new partnership to revitalize downtown and further economic development in Chapel Hill. The strategy is a comprehensive initiative to increase UNC Chapel Hill's economic impact in the town of Chapel Hill and across the Triangle region. Working together, we'll build a plan to support the creation of a downtown Chapel Hill as an innovation district by recruiting businesses and research entities with a UNC affinity. We're very grateful to the Chancellor Guskowitz for his support of this initiative. And we're also very thankful to Doug Rothwell, Carolina's executive in residence for economic development, and his hard work to help make this happen. Doug Rothwell and I'll be chairing an economic development council that will support this effort. And we'll be joined on our side by our town manager, Maurice Jones, and our Economic Development Officer, Dwight Bassett, and also our Downtown Partnership Director, Matt Claddick. The university will have 3 representatives as well, including Doug Rothwell, Gordon Merkline, and Cheryl Waddell. So look forward to making some announcements about the initiatives we'll be working on. And it's very exciting. We've been working on this for a long time, and it's great to have it come to fruition as far as getting started. All right, yesterday, I attended the Carolina Donor Services groundbreaking. It's a very COVID-safe groundbreaking. We were spread out, we were wearing masks, very few people in attendance, but we're very excited because this is our first company to be in our economic development zone, or our enterprise zone, as we call up in North Chapel Hill. They have gotten started. They have got the bulldozers going. So the groundbreaking was a nice ordeal. And if you don't know about Carolina Donor Services, they provide life-saving organs to over 100 hospitals and 4 major transplant centers in our area. And they're going to be based here in Chapel Hill now. They're going from a facility of 15,000 square feet to 55,000 square feet. So they can offer more organ and tissue and other kinds of donations, and they can do family counseling and interact with research in a much better way. So we're very excited to have them be in Chapel Hill and call it home. And so they will be here. We have a couple of public information meetings next week. Please always check the council calendar for the different public information meetings. We have one on 150 East Franklin Street, which will be actually, it says tomorrow evening at 5:15, sorry, which will be about the new commercial office building we're talking about in building downtown. And then next Monday, there'll be a traffic modeling public information meeting about the traffic modeling software that we're going to be using in our town and have available to run scenarios. So encourage you to attend. Those public information meetings will be recorded. So if you can't attend live, please check out as they're posted on the website and play it when you can. All right. We have a lot tonight. Sorry, here we go. We have a couple of petitions before us this evening. And I will let Ms. Anderson get started with the first petition on manufactured home parks petition.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, I know that you all, I asked the mayor's office to send it around as soon as it was ready so that folks could, just to make sure that everybody had time to look, give input. And I didn't hear from anybody, so maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But really, I felt that in response to not only the Assembly of Governments meeting from 2018, but going now to the 1200 MLK vote and what we know is going to continue to happen with our mobile home parks, that I just think it's really important that we bring a renewed sense of purpose, that we come together with our partners, with the other jurisdictions, and that we have a very targeted, intentional process that can give our staffs what they need so they can work together effectively. I think it's a little unfair to expect our staffs to just come up with this when they may not be getting the same guidance from all their governing bodies. So something, you know, hopefully that isn't drawn out, something that can get us to a better place. We're not going to fix all the problems, but I think it's really important that we begin to figure out a more collaborative, effective way to really serve all of our residents, which means our mobile home park residents, our manufactured housing residents, who are really important members of our town and our community. So, so you all should have gotten the resolution, I believe, on Monday. And really, I'm just hoping that we can move forward and then we can get our partners to work with us to so that we're never in the position again that we were on 1200.
Okay, so this is a petition, and our normal process is to receive and refer a petition for the mayor and manager to review, to figure out what pathway it would be on. But I just want to say I appreciate the effort and the intentions in here, and it spurred some really good conversation. I've had some great conversations with Chair Renee Price of Orange County, Mayor LaBelle of Carborough, several county commissioners, some other folks, some community partners, and we all agree that this is an urgent matter and we'd like to continue working together and have a format. And we have the Home Consortium. I know it's been renamed, I can never remember the new name, which didn't have this included in its scope. But we have agreed to meet and figure out the mechanism to get us moving collaboratively together for better options for folks in the mobile home communities when these situations come upon us. So I'd love for you guys to do the normal process, because we've got the conversation started, and then we can have whatever group is working on this bring back recommendations to our council. So in receiving and referring a petition, that's just the pathway it's already started down, if that's okay.
Move, receive, and refer.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Ryan, second by Mr. Nguyen, to receive and refer. All right, roll call vote. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Boyncy.
Aye. Sorry.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen, sorry,
Aye.
I'll move around again, just was doing that. Ms. Ryan,
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Mayor also says aye. So thank you. We will get that going and report back to you where we land as the Orange leaders with our managers and our housing staff in those discussions. All right. I also brought a petition before you. It's also semi-related to 1200 MLK situation with a self-storage unit. When we approved self-storage as a use in Chapel Hill, we did have some restrictions on it, but I felt like we didn't have quite enough. And I wanted the staff to be able to bring us back options for those possible changes to the LUMO. And all I'm asking you is for a petition to ask staff to consider and bring forward some options to us and how to further reduce self-storage units on our main arterial roads or on the BRT. I would like staff to tell us what would be the best option here and where the possibilities were. So I bring that petition to you to send to our staff.
Move to receive and refer.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Anderson. All right, roll call vote then. Mr. Parker,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Boyncy,
Aye.
Ms. Gu,
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen,
Aye.
Ms. Ryan,
Aye.
Ms. Stegman,
Aye.
and the mayor says aye as well. Thank you very much. I think we had someone raise their hand from the audience.
We
who also
have
has a
two
petition.
folks who wish to speak. We have Kalkadan Miller, followed by Dolores Bailey.
Great, you will bring them in.
Hi, sorry, I was just eating and
You're
so to see
fine.
green
Welcome.
stuff moving, it's
You're good. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Kalkida Miller. I am a college student at Guilford College. I am also a hate crime survivor. I had an incident on July 3rd, 2020 at Binkley Baptist Church where I was physically and verbally assaulted. And I'm also helping with the Hate Crime Prevention Act bill, trying to get it passed both in the House and the Senate. And it's really important that this, especially with what's going on, that this bill gets passed and that you support the bill, because it forces lawmakers to train prosecutors, but also train police departments on identifying hate crime, which helps with collecting data, which also helps with protecting the actual groups that are being attacked. There are about 32 different hate groups in North Carolina, and I think it's the job of politicians as well as community members to protect all its community members. So yes, thank you for supporting the bill.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing your story and remember it. And thank you for speaking up and speaking out and helping others to do the same by supporting movement of this bill.
Ms. Bailey?
Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I will piggyback a little bit off of what Ms. Miller has said about how important it is for communities to be protected. And you all know that I was very heavily involved in empowerment, has been heavily involved in the mobile home park communities, all of them, and we will continue to be as such. Yesterday, I got a request from Councilmember Anderson giving me and showing me the petition, and I saw it with Empowerment's name on it, and absolutely it makes sense. I didn't know that that was being formed, but I will say this, you all know the passion that Empowerment has for all communities in the town of Chapel Hill and how important it is we are to address these issues, particularly for mobile home parks. I'm wondering with the petition how quickly things are going to happen, because as we all know, we need to have something happening right now. So I'm not sure how long it takes for a petition to go through the process with the council, but I know that a team needs to be working on communities like Tar Heel and Lakeview right now, we're ready to hit the ground going. Again, I'll mention that the petition sounds like an excellent idea. I'm questioning whether we've got enough time to get one going. It's got to be put into process. Empowerment was only mentioned in it. We didn't know about it, so we don't know. I don't know where it comes from here or where it goes from there. But I just want to express what you already know, and Councilperson Hung Ben, the urgency of working on this right now. I know staff has been working tremendously on it. We're keeping our doors of communication open to these communities, particularly to the Tar Heel community. We've got local residents that have been still calling me saying, how can we get going? What can we do? And so I would offer to the council today rather than tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. We appreciate your willingness and your passion to be involved in this. We've already had some great conversations with the chair and the other mayor, and we're planning to get going, as you said, sooner than later with putting that group together and revitalizing our home consortium and including our nonprofit voices at the table like yours, because we need you. We need you at the table to help with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak on an item not on the printed agenda?
Not seeing anybody.
Okay. Are there any other announcements from council members? Okay. That brings us to our consent agenda. Is there a motion from the group?
I move the consent agenda.
A move by Mr. Nguyen, second by Ms. Anderson to move forward the consent agenda. I will need a roll call vote. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Bointsey.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. You will note that we put the UNC construction updates as a report in here instead of having it as a discussion item. We're going to try this once a year. They come to us twice a year and we will have them do the full presentation. But because we had a rather full agenda and because there wasn't a lot of updates from the last time they presented to us, we put it into the information section for your review. So appreciate any feedback you have on that outside of the meeting. You just let me know if this works for you. We were trying to reduce the need to have a discussion or a presentation on something that hadn't changed very much. All right. That brings us to an update on the town efforts to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. Ms. Drayton.
You all see my presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Kelly Drayton, the Emergency Manager for the town. This brief presentation will provide a few key updates on the COVID-19 pandemic and the town's response. I'd like to start by discussing yesterday's press conference in which Governor Cooper issued a new executive order that continues with the dimmer switch approach to lifting pandemic restrictions. The main point Governor Cooper emphasized with his new executive order, which takes effect 5 p.m. Friday, is that all of these changes must be done with the 3 W's in mind. For example, if any of the venues listed cannot fill to the allowed capacity while also keeping 6 feet of distance between non-household members, they must reduce capacity to the level at which the 3 W's can also be maintained. And most crucially, the statewide mask mandate remains in effect. As you can see in the graphic, capacity levels have been increased for all local establishments, as well as the indoor and outdoor gathering limits. This executive order also lifts the on-site alcohol consumption curfew. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention has also issued guidance on how fully vaccinated individuals can safely gather with other fully vaccinated individuals. These details are updated on our town website, including frequently asked questions if there are any points of confusion. As always, you can find information and helpful links related to the pandemic at townofchapelhill.org/coronavirus. I'd like to also highlight a few additional updates. Last week, the Department of Health and Human Services released its latest iteration of the county alert map, which shows just one red county in the state and 17 orange counties, as compared to the March 4th report, which showed 40% of all counties in either red or orange status. As Governor Cooper emphasized in yesterday's press conference, although our key metrics are trending in the right direction, it is critical that we remain dedicated to the 3 Ws. Also last week, the state opened vaccine eligibility for Group 4, which includes people with medical conditions that put them at a higher risk for severe illness due to COVID. Orange County Health Department remains focused on distributing the vaccine quickly and equitably, and continues to work with partners from across the county to find new and creative ways to bring the vaccine to underserved communities. To date, we have more than 20% of Orange County residents who are fully vaccinated, which is one of the highest vaccination rates in the state. As Dr. Cohen stated in yesterday's press conference, North Carolina is receiving more doses of vaccine each week and is working to ensure that those vaccines are distributed efficiently. As a reminder, Orange County's COVID website hosts a list of names and contact information for vaccine providers in and around the Orange County area, and this can be accessed at www.orangecountync.gov/get-your-shot. I wanted to take just a moment to acknowledge that the town has been actively engaged in our COVID-19 response for more than a year. We officially activated our Emergency Operations Center at 12 noon on March 12, 2020, and has been activated ever since for a total of 378 days. Since that time, our staff has found new and innovative ways to maintain our core services, overcome unprecedented challenges, and work tirelessly to continue to serve and protect our community. I wanted to pass along just a few statistics that highlight some of the tremendous work that's been done over the past year. During this time, we've been able to provide housing and shelter for 66 individuals experiencing homelessness. We have provided assistance to 495 low-income households through the Emergency Housing Assistance Program. We've responded to 863 calls through our call center. We've distributed more than 15,000 boxes of food at the weekly Chapel Hill Food Bank, and we've distributed more than 25,000 masks throughout the community. We're making great progress, and there's still more work to be done, but as we look to the coming weeks with hope, we must remain dedicated to our 3 Ws. So remember, wear a face covering over your nose and mouth, wash your hands and your reusable face covering frequently, and wait 6 feet apart from those who are not members of your household. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Drayton. Can I get you to unmute yourself, council members, and give a round of applause to our dedicated, hardworking staff? They have been amazing. I know that doesn't feel the same in a virtual world, but oh my goodness, we're so proud of you and so grateful for all that all of you have been doing. I know many of you have stepped out of your normal job responsibilities and taken on extra duties. And I know a lot of you have been working double time, triple time through the weekends. And as you said, for over a year. I know everyone's exhausted, but you continue to make incredible strides in keeping our community safe and making sure people have food and shelter and getting information out to everyone. And I know there's a lot of partnerships. I know that the staff works with a lot, but oh my, we are so grateful and so proud. Thank you so much. Other comments from council members or questions? Ms. Gu?
Given that all the museums and all of these are open at 100% capacity, what are our town's facilities, let's say library, or those like town service facilities? Is there any change to that? Any update that we can provide?
Thank you for that question. So right now, our town facilities don't have a set date to reopen. We are continually evaluating programs that we can safely bring on board, like our neighborhood support centers and opening up our rec fields. But we haven't set a date for full facility openings. We're taking steps now to make sure we're preparing those facilities, making sure people get vaccinated, and that we're putting protocols in place so that we can provide a safe environment for our employees and the public when we do open. But we're still actively engaged in those conversations, and we don't have a date set right now. So no change to our current status.
Ms. Anderson?
I just wanted to share just a little bit of extra information on top of what Kelly shared only about the library. I know people have been desperately waiting for the library to be open, and people are very excited about all that they've been doing, but also really want to go back. And I know that the library director, Susan Brown, and her staff have been working really, really hard. She said that they're going to bring kind of a draft plan to the next advisory board meeting that the library board has, and that it's going to be a phased approach, but not that this is anything different that you said, Kelly, just adding a little extra that they are planning, but they don't have a date yet. And instead they want to do a phased, safe approach. But I know that they've been getting a lot of requests about the library.
And I'll just share that the Orange leaders had a quick conversation after the governor's announcement on Tuesday, saying that our numbers, our percent positivity is so low that we're going to see how this works and comply with the governor's orders at this point in time. If we see a rise in positivity, we will reassess that and figure out next steps. But at this point, because our numbers are actually been very stable for quite a while, and we feel like our community has been very good about practicing the 3 W's, and that there have been a lot of safety protocols put into place, that we know the community is desperate to get back to some normalcy. Many of our businesses are desperate to have customers. And I think you'll still see a phased approach from the community coming back together with this, but we'll let you know. And we check in every time, but we don't get a heads up other than a few hours before the governor that he's speaking, and we usually don't know what it is until about an hour before. So it always takes a little bit back to reassess what's going on. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. If there's are there any questions from the audience? Sorry, I forgot to ask. Mr. Parker, do you know of anybody with a raised hand or anything? You're muted. So
We do not.
Okay. All right. So that brings us to item number 13, to consider an application from conditional zoning for Columbia Street Annex at 1150 South Columbia Street from residential 2 to mixed use village conditional zoning district. I will say that this is not a public hearing. We've held 2 public hearings, and with the new virtual laws, we're not allowed to vote the same night as we hold a public hearing. So we do have some additional information from questions that were asked by council. So we will take clarifying questions from council and then determine how to proceed from there after the presentation is given. So here we go. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. My name is Jake Lohman, carrying this project forward. I'm one of the senior planners for the planning department here. And I just want to clarify that I only have 7 updated slides from from previous public hearing. I do have with me tonight members of our engineering team. So Kumar Nepali, Ernest Odalarbi, Chris Roberts, to answer clarifying questions that may arise from stormwater or traffic concerns. And so I will go through the details that I have updated for you now. And what is being asked of you tonight is to consider adopting Resolution A, which is a resolution of consistency for this rezoning, and enacting revised Ordinance A that was provided to you just before the meeting tonight, and I'm going to highlight the changes to that shortly, which would approve the development. And also paired with that, as the mayor has mentioned, adopting the resolution of right-of-way closure to close the portion of Monroe Street right-of-way. And as you may have noticed, the land use plan amendment, which was a previous resolution included in the packet, is no longer in there. And that is simply because the future land use map adoption has revised that area because of the focus area. And so now a land use plan amendment is no longer applicable because it meets the standards of the future land use map, which identifies multifamily shops and offices as primary uses here. And so where we are tonight is for council action on the item proposed. And again, reiterating that the public hearing is closed. So quickly, I want to highlight the revised Ordinance A that was just received. And what it pertains to is, besides clerical corrections and beyond that, what is outlined here pertains primarily to stream restoration stipulations and also clarification of the preservation of the western portion of the property. And what that was stating is just clarification of the easement that will be provided and that it is a condition of this conditional zoning. For a clarification of the stream restoration, what has been added or language added is a statement of nutrient reduction, which was discussed at the last public hearing. It has clarified the homeowner association responsibilities of the stream maintenance. It has also added a statement of clarification for the land disturbance associated with the stream restoration, because it is undetermined at this time how much land disturbance it will take to clean up the stream and restore it as required by the civil engineer that will evaluate the stream and also the town that will approve that final restoration. So that has been clarified, and also a statement of a performance guarantee for the applicant so that the town has reassurance that the stream will be restored and that there will be funds there to do so. And so those are really the clarifying statements of what is in revised Ordinance A. I will be glad to answer any questions there. But also I have Kumar Nepali here who will touch on, I believe was an item asked for NCDOT's clarification of the proposed interchange revisions at the intersection of 15501 and 86. So I have a few slides here. If Kumar is here, I can run the show for him.
Yeah, Jake, I'm here. Good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Kumar, for joining us. I asked that you help make sure that we understood what the proposed changes were. So thank you for joining us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So in 2018, NCDOT completed a feasibility study, starting feasibility study on Fordham Boulevard, 15501 from South Columbia Street ramp here. You can see the limits ended almost into the Chapel Hill here, all the way to East Town Lakeview Drive, close to I-40. The feasibility study was initiated by many requests from the council and other traffic projections in the future. So they had a big report, which we actually shared that with the town council in 2019. We are happy to provide that report to you if you need it. It's 50 pages of the document. They came up with several improvements for each intersection on 15501 Fordham Boulevard from here all the way to East Town. The improvements varied from anywhere changing the existing ramps to diamond or on loop or diverge diamond or super street they call U-turns, no left turns, many things they came up from here all the way to Lakeview Drive East Down intersection. The project now, I will go through what was proposed at this intersection at Columbia Street and 15501 54 ramp in a minute. But the project is still under waiting list for funding. It will be sometime 2030 term or 2032 term for the statewide project to be qualified for funding for overall all this corridor for all these improvements. Now, why we came up particularly for South Columbia Street and 15501 intersection, our ramp that where we are discussing at Columbia Annex project. Several years back, there was a project development application that the council approved for, it's called Obi Creek. During that process, when we did the transportation impact analysis with the projected build out date for the development, Obi Creek development, this intersection was failing, particularly the ramp coming from 15501 from Durham and making left turn to Columbia Street going towards Southern Village and Pittsburgh. There were, if you remember, there were two left turns, but in the PM peak hour, this traffic backs up all the way here. And we were trying to see what can be done with the signal timing, playing with a lot of other things, increasing the queue lengths, changing the markings and combination of the lanes, that whatever we can do within the existing pavement, we tried, but we felt it doesn't help. So long term, we should develop some project. That's how it started. So we took that project, and there was some concept plans developed during the council approval of that Obi Creek development, and we incorporated those concept plans into this big project that I mentioned from here all the way to Lakeview Drive. So the overall project has 4 components: this intersection, Manning Drive intersection, and then 15501 at Glen Lennox, and several other intersections going towards Estes Drive and Sage Road on this project. At this time, nothing is approved, no funding is available, it is waiting. So Jay, can you go to the next slide, please? So if you look at it here, this is the one that we developed. So right now everybody goes here and make right turn to come into the campus, or make left turn going towards Southern Village from 15501, coming from Durham. But what the concept plan that we developed was, working with NCDOT, was changing the ramp to make this who are going to Southern Village or Pittsburgh, so this way they can go. This will become a right turn only, not left turns anymore. And this is the best concept plan, and worked at based on the analysis, capacity analysis for future. And there were several alternates to develop for this ramps, but this is the best one that was developed. Now, what can happen to the Columbia Annex project if this become true? I think if you look at the footprint and everything, we have actually several years back in 2019, DOT and the town staff actually met with this developer, Columbia Annex developer, and showed this concept plan, and both consultants worked out the property and right of way, how it will impact the building and this development property. And I think it was determined this can be worked out, and there won't be any impact on this property with this concept plan. Like I said, it is not a funded project at this time, but it was included as an official project in the statewide transportation improvement program. It is scheduled 8 years from now for funding. We don't know if it will be funded at that time. Until that time, we have to work out with what is going on here, including the signal timing, changing some things. We will continue to work with DOT and see what can be done to relieve the traffic congestion in this area. Yes, ma'am.
So these changes, is Obi Creek one of the primary drivers for needing these changes, or is it also background growth and other?
It was both, ma'am. It was the 3 combinations. One is there was an existing problem with this left turn queuing and left turn delay. And there was an increase in significant increase in traffic by the Obi Creek development, making these left turns. There was also growth factor for the undeveloped areas in the area that we used. So there are those 3 things factor to come up with something better than existing conditions.
Because one of the things, as you know, the Obi Creek development agreement hasn't moved forward. since its approval. We haven't seen any buildings, so there may be a chance that that area will actually develop in a different way. So I just think before we commit to anything, we just need to keep that in mind, that there may be, as I remember, something like 10,000 trips a day were coming out of Obi Creek. So that may not be the case moving forward, to have that kind of intensity down there.
That's correct, ma'am. Jake, there may be another slide that I want to show the same concept. This is not it. Next one. So the same thing that I showed, it shows better here, Fordham Boulevard, and this is the proposed Columbia Annex project here. And you can see the ramp here, how we came up. Again, all these things are subject to change. This is very first concept plan. There was we worked out some engineering design plans with both consultants, DOT and the Columbia Annex consultant to minimize the impact on this property. This may not be the final as time goes. It will come back to the town council and MPO. The designs have not started. There was no money set aside by the TIP program for the design at this time. So anything that happens from here all the way to East Town, it has to go through the town council and MPO for review and approval. So we will definitely you will get to know and see every step in the process, ma'am.
Okay. Are there other questions?
Thank you.
Mr. Parker?
I had a question for Jake, but are we there yet? Or are we still talking just about this?
I think just if you had any questions for Kumar at this point in time.
Okay, thanks. I'm good.
Okay. Jake, did you have more to your presentation?
No, ma'am. So I was going to say, reiterate the considerations for this evening. Did want to say that the applicant team is here if you have clarifying questions for them. But yes, Mr. Parker, I'm glad to.
Yeah, in response to a question, it was said that the applicant had agreed that the HOA or declaration of condominium would prohibit dedicated STRs, and I didn't see that stipulation. I may have missed it. We just got this, and it's got 123 of them. But is it in there, or?
It is not in there, but that can be added as part of the action tonight.
Mr. Jewell, can you add, there are a few other things on the list too. Can you update us, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Dan Jewell with Coulter Jewell Thames. Thank you again for listening to us this evening, asking these questions. So yes, absolutely. We will commit to no short-term rentals. Those will also be in the homeowners association documents. There were a couple of other clarifying questions that were forwarded to us over the last couple of days that came from the council, if you'd like me to touch on those.
Yes,
as
please.
well. And these may or may not be in the final resolution. As Jake said, I think he sent it out about an hour or two ago, and we have not seen the final version yet, but we've been working, and hopefully everything is captured. We are committing, as we said last meeting, to making the roof solar ready in the project. We will commit to, we had committed to removing invasive plants from the RCD. We will actually commit to removing invasives on the entire site, not just the resource conservation district. The stipulation, I think there was a clarification on the number of parking spaces. 69 is the number of parking spaces, and also as to do with parking. There was a question about whether or not we can accommodate zip cars. Yes, we can. We're going to have several spaces that are dedicated to rideshare, zip car, that sort of thing. So if zip car is still a thing, I've not seen many of them around of late, maybe because of COVID. We will certainly agree to accommodate those. There was a question about whether we would be willing to age restrict. If the council so chooses, yes, we would be willing to restrict to age 22 or older. That is voluntary. There was also a question, I guess, based on maybe some rethinking of the BRT station location, which is currently shown south of the entrance ramp onto 54, whether we could incorporate the BRT station in front of our site if we moved it here. And yes, absolutely, we have room to incorporate the BRT in front of our site. That was, oh, and I would also like to clarify, Mr. Lohman touched on this, but there was a question about whether or not the homeowners association will actually have the wherewithal to do repairs and upgrades to the stream. If in the future, as we do our look back and review that we are committing to in the stipulations, and the answer is the developer will seed the HOA at the beginning with $10,000 dedicated for future stream maintenance. And he has also committed that if additional funds are necessary in the future, he will provide guarantees to do those. And there was one other question having to do with our alternate buffer request out front. And that was whether or not we could actually provide all of the canopy trees that would normally be required by LUMO. And the answer is yes. We think if we can sort of trade off shrubs for trees, we can provide all the canopy trees. We may have to reduce the understory trees somewhat, but I agree, we agree that would maybe make a much nicer effect out front to have a grove of trees. So we're happy to commit to that and work with staff on that, on the details.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. I know we got some of those requests to you late, and I appreciate your responding to them. Jake, do we have a way to, if council accepts these stipulations, to add them in so it would be a revised, or how does that work as far as if we, I'm sure there'll be some more discussion here, but I want to make sure that we captured the things that the applicant offered and then the council can decide whether they're content with those or not.
Yes, we've certainly captured those and we'll have a record of that. And Ms. Anderson, I think if you want to clarify how you see best fit to bring those in, but it would be it would be a revised resolution at the end of this, whatever action is taken.
It's my understanding, Jake, that most of what you have just been talking about is in the draft that you sent out this afternoon to council, but that there are just a few more tweaks. Is that correct?
That's correct. Everything is in the draft. Everything that Dan touched on would be a revision to that, a clarification if council so chooses to adopt each of those.
In addition to the STR, correct? The STR provision it would also be an addition.
Would also be an addition.
Okay.
So with the invasive species, so with the solar, there are a lot of things that Mr. Jewell just said would actually be additions to what was sent out this afternoon.
So as long as the substance of those is discussed in this hearing, then those can be added by staff subsequent to your vote, in whichever direction you go. And the only thing that I would ask to clarify is whether by STRs you mean something less than 30 days or 60 days in duration, because that's a discussion we've been having. So that's since we'll be drafting it after the fact, that's a substantive clarification that I would like the movement to make when the time comes. Thanks.
And I think, do we need a clarification also on dedicated versus the private home STRs?
Yeah, I had asked for dedicated.
We all asked for dedicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yeah, I also had sent in a question about bicycle spaces, and my experience from a number of buildings downtown is that there's a surprisingly large demand for bicycle spaces. At Greenbridge, we have over 125 bicycle spaces and they're almost all full. So I was wondering if you would have the ability at some future date, do you have a space or a place where if you start seeing the demand for more bicycle spaces, whether it's in your garage or wherever, that you can accommodate? Particularly with the advent of e-bikes, I think we're going to be seeing a whole lot more demand for bicycle spaces.
Mr. Parker, yes, we can. In fact, we've identified where we can easily incorporate 30 bicycle spaces right now, right at the outset.
Yeah, but 30, I'm saying a multiple of 30. Do you have room for another 30?
We can find spaces for them, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Stegman?
I just want to actually make a process comment. Before I do that, I want to say thank you to the applicant for being so responsive to the input from everybody. But I just want to make a plea again for any changes or requests that are going to an applicant when it's the night we're supposed to vote to go to all of council. It's really hard to assess changes on the spot that we haven't all seen before or had the opportunity to consider. So really like to request that change moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Other clarifying questions? Could we just get an update for the public on what the pedestrian improvements are going to be near there so that we can make sure we're understanding what they are? I mean, just something.
Mayor, I'd be happy to do that unless,
Yes, please.
all right. If I could be allowed to share the screen, we did prepare an exhibit. If I can find it, here we go. All right, are you able to see that?
Yes.
All right. So proposed pedestrian improvements include a relocating the crosswalk at Purefoy, so it's in advance of the intersection, and that would include an activated flashing pedestrian light at this location. We will install sharrows in the curbside southbound lane next to the turn lane, so that it's very clear to motorists and bicycles that they are supposed to share the road at that location with bicycles as you travel to the south. Of course, we're going to be building a continuous sidewalk all along the property frontage, all the way down to the on-ramp to 54 Fordham Boulevard. And we are, in addition, staff has requested that we provide a payment in lieu for crosswalks to be installed in the future at this location and this location. And we appreciate the update that Mr. Napoli gave a few minutes ago, because that explains why they would prefer the payment in lieu, because I guess they're anticipating some improvements to that intersection in the future, and at that point the money would be available to do those crosswalk improvements.
Are there any clarifying questions from council? Okay, Ms. Gu, then Ms. Ryan.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the cursor. Is that possible, or that the developer is open to the idea that we're going to do a reevaluation of the traffic safety and the volume traffic analysis, like after 1 year? That question has been proposed in the previous discussion as well, but I haven't heard a response yet. I just want to ask that again.
Yeah, sure. We'd be happy to do a 1 year look back with the staff and see that everything's functioning nicely and properly once everything is in place. Absolutely.
Okay, so can we do the same with regard to the stream, the RCD? People worried about the volume of the stormwater and the quality, the water quality of the stormwater. I understand that the developer has promised multiple measures to maintain the quality and the stormwater volume, but are we open to the idea that we're going to do a look back or evaluation after 1 year when the project, after the project is in place?
Yes, ma'am. And I think Mr. Lohman can clarify. There's actually a stipulation now that outlines that there will be a 1 year look back, and also how that will be paid for if repairs are necessary. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Yes, and I do want to clarify that annual inspections are required. Will be one of the stipulations that has been modified, is that annual inspections will be required for at least 5 years after the stream restoration.
So that is that promise of making any necessary modification or adjustment can be applied to the traffic situation as well, if there are traffic issues or anything that we identify as unsafe. I know that last week there But yeah, I think I think this month there is a car accident that involve a pedestrian in that area. So I do have concern with the safety of that intersection. So are we open to the idea of to do a 1 year look back and see if the situation is safe, the traffic pattern is safe after 1 year?
I would need your transportation staff's input on what the magnitude of that might be. That could be fairly open-ended, as you can imagine, and not sure that we could necessarily quantify what was the result of this development or, you know, developments that are currently going on at the university and that sort of thing. But we will commit to working with staff a year after it's built, analyzing pedestrian, bicycle, and traffic movements. And if adjustments are made, we would work with the town. I can't commit to any monetary amount right now, I'm sorry. We would work with the town to try and identify those and figure out how those can be accomplished.
Ms. Ryan?
You had talked about stepping down the large retaining walls. Did you bring any diagrams that show those changes?
We did. Here we go. If you can see, it's a little lighter on the bottom, but the upper image shows the upper level where the building and parking will be, a first tier wall, a lower tier wall, a nice set of steps that would be publicly accessible, that would get folks down into the bottoms, we'll say, the natural area. And then this cross section, which Wendy did draw to scale, shows how all that works. So just in scale, these steps are about 7 to 8 feet each. And I think the first images we brought you several months ago, Councilman Ryan, you were the one that identified that at that point, some of those walls were 15, 16 feet high. So we hope this is a much better solution.
No, and thank you. And I think it is a much better solution. And thank you for adding the stairs, you know, and for making this something that we're going to have a nicely restored stream. We're going to have a preserved area. We're going to have a wildlife area, and we can actually get people into it. So I commend you for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Mayor, if I could, I would want to like to say one other thing about the bottom area. I'm going to stop the share for just a second. I'm happy to bring it back up if we want to. And I think the staff did get this in as a stipulation, but I would like to reiterate it for the record. At the public hearing, Mr. Gammon offered to provide a conservation easement on all of the back part of the property from the wall over. So again, I'm not sure if this got in to stipulation because I haven't seen the final version. But we have worked out language that says preservation of western property prior to issuance of a zoning compliance permit. The owner, as voluntarily offered during the February 24th, 2021 Chapel Hill Town Council public hearing meeting, will create an easement to preserve and maintain in a natural state the forest west of the stream, with the exception of the stream and habitat enhancements otherwise required and are authorized by the ordinance, in other words, the stream restoration. And that easement shall be recorded with the Orange County Register of Deeds, and the continued existence of this easement is an express condition of and is required for ongoing compliance with conditional rezoning. That was a mouthful, but I did want to get that on record.
It is in the newer stipulations.
Yes, thank you.
Didn't memorize all 128 of them, but I went to.
Okay, I had to read it.
That was in there. Okay, any other clarifying questions from council? I will ask the applicant. I understand you're meeting with some neighbors to walk the back side of the property on Friday. And thank you for reaching out to the neighbors, but I didn't know if there was any kind of specific thing that they were asking you to expound on, or what your interests were in. Mr. Shostak.
Oh, sorry. I'm really not sure what's going to come of that, but we're here. We're just going to walk and see what happens, see what we talk about. But I think that it's a pretty nice place back there, and I hope everybody can see the future there and pathways and other kind of conservation activities.
So are you thinking there may be a pathway for folks in the neighborhood behind to walk along the creek, or I just was kind of wondering what the.
Last time I was there, there was pathways back there coming down from the upper neighborhood. Maybe it's their way to get to to Merritt's or BLT.
There we go. Okay. All right. Councilmember, any more clarifying questions? Well, then we'll bring it back to comments. Ms. Ryan, then Ms. Anderson.
Yeah, this project had me concerned because of the encroachment into the RCD and the impacts on the neighbors. And I have to really commend the design team for addressing a lot of those concerns and really going above and beyond. I am thrilled that you're going to restore the canopy trees, and I'm fine without the shrubs. This is not we don't need to buffer this from anything, but canopy trees make everything so much more livable. Changing the walls and making that wild area accessible to folks, I think, is another great thing to do. So I just think that, the decreased building height, I think the changes you've made in the massing make it less impactful on the neighborhood. So I really appreciate the job that you've done and how you've worked to address community concerns on this project.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you.
Yeah. Same. Just thank you for being so willing to work with the staff and the community and really making it a really exciting project that I think has just come such a far way. So thank you.
Mr. Boyncey?
Yeah, I'll be brief, but greatly appreciate your responsiveness to all of what you heard from council members, but also from community members. It's clear and evident that you all took our concerns seriously, and I appreciate it.
Ms. Gu?
Yeah, well, I think this project, of course, at the beginning, there are multiple concerns that I have on this project. But on the other hand, I think that I can see the merit of this project with regard to bringing the housing that will be needed, especially supporting those like starting professionals that we're trying to bring back to our town. I think there are lots of other things that I would like that I would appreciate from this project, especially with regard to the parking, how the parking is managed, and trying to reduce the number of parkings and encourage this multimodal transportation kind of living in the area that's neighboring the UNC campus. I think all these areas that I think I really would like this project to succeed. But on the other hand, I do still have concern with regard to the traffic safety. That has been mentioned multiple times throughout this project and by the neighbors, and it is a major concern from our Transportation and Connectivity Board. So I think that there are several measures that has been incorporated in the final plan, and I really appreciate that. I'm hoping it will work out, but still I have concerns whether or not that is sufficient to address all the concerns regarding to the safety with regard to the conflict between different modes of traffic. So I think it's necessary that we make the commitment, say we're going to do the re-evaluation after 1 year. And if there are things that doesn't work, if it's still not safe, if there are increase in the number of car accidents, especially involving pedestrians and bicyclists, I think then I'm hoping the developer will commit to do some things to improve the situation of that in the area surrounding this project. So that's the only comments or the major concerns I still have.
Okay. All right. council, I'm hearing positive comments. I want to make sure that you're either good with the revisions that were suggested, that were added on in addition to the revisions you've already seen, or if we need to make any changes. Ms. Ryan?
I'm personally interested in the age restriction. I didn't know what everybody, if that actually was one of the things that made it in, or was that just a maybe?
It was an offer from the applicant. I guess the goal here was that this would not become an undergraduate, but more towards graduate and family and medical, whoever working close to UNC would be the preferred situation here.
Okay, yeah, I would be supportive of that. Originally, I thought it was 25 plus, but the applicant prefers 22.
Yeah.
Okay. I would be supportive of this not becoming undergraduate housing for sure.
Okay. And we added in, you heard the solar roof ready, the well, you heard all the things they said, sorry, the non-dedicated STRs.
Yeah, that was just when we had
dedicated STRs.
Yeah, please.
Oh, my goodness. Sorry, folks. The invasive species on the whole site. I already said the canopy trees, that they could incorporate the BRT site. And we got the clarification on the water quality check-ins already. So those were already on the list.
Can I get just a clarification on the age restriction, since this is a for sale development. Does that mean that you wouldn't sell to folks under 22? Does it mean that if a parent bought it, nobody under 22 can live there? I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of it, because it's not a rental. And so does that mean somebody who bought it couldn't sublet to somebody under 22? What is the meaning of the age restriction?
I hate to do this, but I kind of throw that out to what you all would be interested in, because this is a question that literally we heard 36 hours ago. So we have not had time to dig into all the mechanics of it. And I know with leases, you get into cosigners and all that sort of thing. But I think the clear thing to say would be that no one under the age of 22, and again, this all goes back to whether or not we can legally do that, and that would be something we'd have to do some research on. But if we can legally do it, then we would restrict a sale of a unit to people who are 22 years of age and older. Certainly, we can't restrict somebody from having somebody younger, a child or whoever living with them. We can't do that. But so it hasn't been fully vetted, but that is the intent, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think for me, the interest would be in not having it be a place where parents are buying units for their undergraduate children. If again, I know there's legalities in what you can and cannot do, but that would be my ultimate interest here. I'm assuming that a 21 or an 18-year-old is never going to be able to afford to buy this. Well, I should take that back.
Yeah.
18-year-olds wouldn't be able to afford to buy something like this, but they might have parents in a position to do it for them. So, and again, I don't know what the legalities are around it, but that would be my interest.
Ann Anderson, did you
And
want
in candor, this is a newly emergent issue for me. So I would also have to check on the legalities of it, but I do caution you to put too much emphasis on the idea of preventing someone under a certain age from living there or from being the primary occupant. I'm not sure about your authority to prevent that for all the reasons that you've already mentioned. Your concern is noted, Councilmember Ryan. I'm just not sure about the legal parameters, and we have to look into it. We could make it a contingent on verifying that it's within your authority, but that's tricky at this stage.
And my guess is that the design of the units, which are mostly one bedroom kind of things or studios, I think that's not the kind of environment a lot of undergraduates are looking for. So, I think that will help. But
Mr. Shostak, do you have something to share?
one of the things that I learned on a project in Raleigh is you can't restrict age or race or any of those kind of restrictions for purchase. You can't, the HOA can limit the rental or the use of that to certain people, but not for age or something like that. But you can't limit the sale of it to any group. We had another piece of property in right next to NC State, and it was not going to be student housing, period. But we had to do that within the HOA, not in the sales documents.
Could we put it in as a recommendation that the HOA consider making sure that this is I don't know what the phraseology would be, but we'd like the HOA to consider that this would not be undergraduate housing.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like what we could do then, based on the legal opinions we got on the Amity Station project, while we can't, determine who it gets sold to, what we can do is that any, rental of the unit would have to be to somebody 22 or older or over 22, whatever we're ever going to do. Because as Mr. Shostak said, you can restrict to whom you rent based on age. And that was one of the agreements we had gotten when we were still doing a development agreement with Amity Station. So, I think that seems to be the most reasonable way to deal with this.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
All right. All right, you've heard some recommendations. Is anyone willing to make a motion of any kind this evening?
One clarification, please.
Okay, Mr. Lohman.
Just a clarification on the Ms. Ryan's recommendation for the modified buffer. That's not a new stipulation necessarily. It would be a modification or a revision of the modifications to regulations that are already being asked for.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Well, how do we make the motion if it's a revised?
Yes.
So what are we doing? Just
the motion would be, well, there's three parts to this motion, I believe, and one would be to look at that. I don't get to put those.
Isn't it Resolution A?
And so the revisions that were added this evening to Resolution A.
So
it's actually Ordinance A.
Resolution A.
So the revised Resolution A.
No, it's revised Ordinance A.
Oh, sorry, the revised Ordinance A.
I'll move the revised Ordinance A.
Second.
The recommendation to ask the HOA to limit rentals to 22 plus. And I can't say all the other stuff, but it's already in there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and Mr. Nguyen seconded the motion?
Yes.
So moved by Ms. Anderson, second by Mr. Nguyen.
Do we have to vote on Resolution A first?
Ms. Anderson?
Yes, I would prefer that you do a motion and a vote on the resolution of consistency.
I'll move the resolution of consistency.
Second.
The move by Ms. Anderson, second by Mr. Parker to move the resolution of consistency. That's our first order of business. Okay. Any other comments? Roll call vote. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Boynton?
Aye.
Ms. Gu?
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen?
Aye.
Ms. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Stegman?
Aye.
Mayor says aye as well, so that is unanimous. Ms. Anderson, we'll go back to your motion of the revised ordinance.
Revised Ordinance A with the request to ask the HOA to limit rentals to 22 plus.
Second.
Can I do a friendly amendment? Are we asking them, or that we would like them to do that?
I think we'll have to recommend. I don't think that we can demand they do it. So I think we would recommend they do it.
We're demanding that the HOA not allow dedicated STRs. So I don't see why we can't demand that they don't.
Yeah.
I get the Andersons mixed up here. Miss Anderson, the attorney.
assuming that we have the authority to do so,
That's what we're gonna ask her right
Yeah.
now.
that we demand that the HOA.
That we require.
So I think the discussion went in the right place. So we can demand as to STRs. That's within your zoning authority. I think you are in safer territory by recommending that the HOA recommending or requesting, and that they do whatever measures are necessary to prevent this from being undergraduate housing, and however you want to word that. But demanding it may be, we just are not sure about that at this point.
Okay. Is recommending satisfactory for council at this point is the terminology?
Requesting.
You want like requesting?
Yeah,
better?
requesting. Yeah, I think that's
requesting. Sure, requesting. Okay.
We're requesting that the applicant make this project 22 plus age restricted, however possible.
That we're requesting the HOA to make that. Yes. Okay.
I second the request.
So it's been moved by Ms. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Nguyen. Are there more comments to share on this one that have not been shared? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Boynton.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Wow, we really took this project from hearing all the concerns and making it into a better fit. There's another part to this one too. Do we need, it's okay.
Yeah, I move we approve the resolution closing the right of way.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Stegman. Are there any comments or concerns? We didn't really talk about this component of it. We've discussed it before. All right. Roll call vote then. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Boynton.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan. Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. That is also unanimous. So, all right. Are there any other pieces to these two items?
Oh, ma'am.
All right. Again, we appreciate you working with us on our concerns and making a better outcome here. And appreciate continuing to work with our staff as you refine some of these components here. And thank you for time and effort.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And on behalf of the team, I'd like to say thank you for all of your good comments. And I will say that it's because we have a developer client who is willing to listen, willing to work, and let us do the right things to bring a good project to you. So thank you and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, a reminder that item 15 has been postponed, and that brings us to item number 16, to open the public hearing on the issuance of the 2/3 bonds to fund parks and recreation, public safety, and streets and sidewalk projects in the capital improvements plan. And we have Ms. Oland with us. Hello.
Oh,
okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Amy Oland, and I'm the Director of Business Management. I'll be presenting this evening on the town's capital program and the proposed 2/3 bond issuance. We came before you 2 weeks ago to request the opening of the public hearing. So my presentation is very similar to what it looked like at that time. It has 12 slides and should take no longer than 10 minutes. So the purpose of tonight's item is to hold a public hearing on the bond orders for the proposed 2/3 bonds. Tonight, I'll discuss what 2/3 bonds are. I'll describe the funding process for the referendum bonds versus the 2/3 bonds, and I'll go over the next steps in the financing process. So what are 2/3 bonds? 2/3 bonds are general obligation bonds that do not require a public vote. If in the prior year, no new general obligation bonds were issued, then in the next year, an equal amount to 2/3 of the reduction of principal that was paid off in the prior year may be issued. Since the town did not issue any new debt in fiscal year 2020, the town can issue 2/3 bonds. To determine the amount eligible, we look first to the amount of general obligation principal that was paid off in fiscal year 2020. That was $4,812,000. 2/3 of that amount is $3,208,000. We round that down to the nearest issuing amount, which is in $5,000 increments, and therefore we get $3,205,000, the amount that can be issued in 2021. The average debt service, looking at a $3.205 million borrowing, is $198,000 over a 20-year term. As we look at the 2/3 bonds, we have 3 bond orders, the first of which is for parks and recreation facilities in the amount of $1.155 million for, or proposed projects are Cedar Falls Park Tennis Complex reconstruction, the Hargraves Park Tennis Court improvements, Ephesus Park Technical Assessment and tennis and pickleball court repairs, Hargraves Park Playground surface replacement, 80 Clark Pool improvements, Hargraves Center Ball Field renovation, the Umstead Park Basketball Court, and Homestead Aquatic Center pool improvements. The second bond order is for public safety in the amount of $550,000. These funds would be used to replace engine 33 as a frontline vehicle, and the existing truck would be moved to reserve status, which is backup. The third bond order is for streets and sidewalks projects in the amount of $1.5 million. These funds would allow the town to begin addressing the significant backlog of needed maintenance on about 2/3 of the town's streets, and would be used for high priority sidewalk repairs throughout the town. So the approved schedule for the proposed 2/3 bonds includes authorization of the preliminary resolution for the 2/3 bonds, which was done on February 24th, the introduction of the bond orders, which we did on March 10th, the public hearing, which we are here tonight, the adoption of the bond orders for the 2/3 bonds, and the issuance resolution for the 2/3 and affordable housing referendum bonds, both on April 7th. The local government commission approval of the sale of the bonds on April 13th. Approval, yes. And then the local government commission actual bond sale on April 27th. And then we would hope to close on the 2/3 bonds on the 12th, and then the affordable housing bonds on the 13th. We'll then come back to council at the next regularly scheduled meeting to recognize the bond proceeds and appropriate the funds for use so that we can get started on those projects. So based on the progress of the projects to date and the expected cash flows needed for the next 12 to 18 months, we've determined that an issuance amount of $4.755 million of the affordable housing bond referendums should be issued, in addition to the $3.205 million 2/3 bonds that we're here talking about today. So unlike the 2/3 bonds, the referendum bonds only have one council approval step for issuance, and that's the adoption of the issuance resolution, which will come before council on April 7th. The first 2 steps have already taken place, the first being council's approval of the referendum, and the second being the public vote for the bond orders in November of 2018. So the town's capital program involves a multi-year planning process. However, it's important that that plan be flexible and be able to react to changes in costs, needs, and opportunities. One of the ways for us to achieve flexibility in the capital program is to adjust the timing and sequence of projects to reflect changing priorities. We're here today discussing the proposed 2/3 bond issuance as a result of some additional capacity in the debt fund due to a delay in the timing of the Municipal Services Center project. So our recommendation is that council open the public hearing on the bond orders authorizing the issuance of the 2/3 general obligation bonds in the maximum amount of $3.205 million for Parks and Rec, public safety, and streets and sidewalks projects. So next steps would be for council to receive comments from the public, for comments and questions from the mayor and town council, for a motion to close the public hearing and receive comments for 24 hours, and then for council to consider adopting the bond orders and issuance resolutions at the April 7th council meeting. And this concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Can you bring us back to full screen?
Yes.
Okay, first I'll ask questions if council members have any clarifying questions. All right, do we have members of the public wishing to speak on this item? I think we do.
Yes, we have 3 members so far. We start with Susan Baylog, followed by Diane Willis.
I don't have Susan, but I have moved Diane.
Okay, and following Diane Willis, we have Tyler Steelman.
Welcome.
Okay, so Sue didn't get to talk?
We don't see her there, so if you want to start, and if she comes in, we'll bring her in.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Heminger and council members. My name is Diane Willis, and I'd like to put in an enthusiastic word in favor of the 2/3 bonds that will be used in part to fund tennis court improvements at Hargraves Park, Cedar Falls Park, and Ephesus Park, as well as other parks and recreation facilities. This past year has shown a spotlight on the need for open spaces, breathing room, parks, trails, recreation facilities, and places to exercise outdoors. Not only are these sorts of things nice to have, but they are also necessary for all of our well-being and mental health. During this horrible pandemic, our tennis and other outdoor facilities have gotten increased use, demonstrating how vital these are. As a tennis player for most of my life, I am particularly interested in the tennis courts, of which we have too few in Chapel Hill and very little maintenance of what we do have. Over the nearly 30 years I've lived here, I actually cannot remember a time that we did not have to beg the town to fix glaring problems with the tennis courts, from cracks and holes in the surfacing, to burned out lights, to broken nets and windscreens, to asking for our backboard to be replaced at Ephesus, something that has been overlooked since the last one rotted years ago and I guess got forgotten. Promises come and go unfulfilled, and with large cracks in the tennis courts, as well as spider cracks that hold the water like a sponge, eventually the courts become unplayable. Taxpayers should not have to be forced to join an expensive club in order to play their sport because the town neglects to maintain its own facilities. I encourage you to pass these 2/3 bonds and use the Parks and Rec funds for the projects that you've listed, including regular maintenance of the facilities. I look forward to necessary repairs on the Ephesus tennis courts with all due speed, because you've actually reduced our court numbers to only 3 now at Ephesus of the 6 we had, by removing a net because one of the mini cracks was deemed too dangerous. The weather is warming up and the demand for these courts is great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tyler Steelman.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Tyler Steelman, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Chapel Hill Parks, Greenways, and Recreation Commission in support of the 2/3 bonds for the projects that have been listed. The PGR Commission has been advocating for additional funds, including a 2019 petition that lists some of these projects out, and as recently as February 2021 with a petition requesting funds for several of the projects listed for the 2/3 bonds. Chapel Hill has some excellent facilities, but as some people have noted here and in previous meetings surrounding these 2/3 bonds, some of our amenities are in disrepair. One area that's been highlighted already tonight are the tennis courts. Some of these tennis courts have been deemed unsafe and they are unusable until we fix them. The funds allocated from the 2/3 bonds would help us address some of the key needs identified in our Parks and Rec department. The department itself has identified over 80 projects in the town's capital improvement plan, which are currently unfunded and total more than $23 million. And the projects listed in our 2/3 bond would speed up repairs in these necessary areas and spread the impact of these funds across many different facilities and amenity types, including basketball courts and pools and playgrounds, tennis courts and ball fields. The PGR Commission believes this list maximizes the impact and the effectiveness of these funds in the community and will bring much needed improvements to the town's parks. Additional funding, this funding will provide a much needed patch to make sure current amenities are kept at a baseline of safe use for members of our community. The repairs that they will facilitate will make a tangible difference to Chapel Hill citizens and shows that the council is willing to find solutions to concerns expressed by members of the public. Park facilities improve the quality of life for all of our citizens. They're a great enhancement to our neighborhoods and they contribute to affordable living. And so we believe that the appropriation of these funds will benefit the entire town. And I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Steelman's the last person signed up, or there are no more raised hands, so I think that's everybody.
Okay. I bring it back to council members.
We don't need to do anything, right?
I think we have to continue the public hearing to April. This says continue the public hearing, hang on.
Or 24 hours, I believe, just to keep it open. And then we'll be back with the issuance resolution on the 7th and the adoption of the bond orders, because that couldn't be done on the same night as the public hearing.
So don't we close the public hearing tonight then?
Close the public hearing and receive comments for 24 hours, yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Anderson, second by Mr. Nguyen to close the public hearing, but still accept comments for 24 hours. Anything has been shared already? Other than, again, thank you to Amy Olin and her team and everyone working to find the fact that we could borrow these monies to help do some of these projects we need to do. Ms. Gu?
Yeah, well, I think I support this bond. I think it is an urgent community needs that the community has expressed repeatedly over the past few years. So I think it's urgently needed, and I'm hoping that I'm sure that we have the community support to do this. But on the other hand, I also want to know that what is our long-term plan in order to keep the maintenance of those very important facilities. I don't know if there is, I think we discussed that in our council retreat as well. I think this is like a special kind of like borrowing money to support those programs, but apparently we need a regular long-term plan of how we're going to maintain those town facilities so that we can provide a stable, consistent service to the community. So that is a question that I'm hoping, and after this, we're going to have a discussion on how we're going to do this.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Burku. That is a great point. And yes, as we've spoken with council over the last couple of years, we've recognized that we have maintenance needs that have been deferred throughout the organization. And it's one of the key topics that we hope to bring before you all at our work sessions scheduled for next Wednesday, the 31st, and then also April 14th. So we hope to continue those conversations and talk about some options for how we can help to make that happen.
All right. All right, we have a motion on the floor. I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Boyncey?
Aye.
Ms. Gu?
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen?
Aye.
Ms. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Stegman?
Aye.
The mayor says aye as well. So we've closed the public hearing, but we're still taking comments. If people want to send them in, we're happy to take those in. So we will see you again on April 7th, I believe you said you're in. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you again. All right. That brings us to item number 17, which is to open the public hearing on a limited scope special permit modification for Signature Health of Chapel Hill at 1602 East Franklin Street. I'll remind folks that this is a SUP, so we will have to have people sworn in if they're wishing to speak from the public on this item. So if you're wishing to do that, you'll need to raise your hand so we can find you and make that happen before you start with your comments. First, we have the presentation, so sorry. Here we go.
Sorry, this will only take a few minutes. So good evening, Mayor and Council.
Mayor, just
sorry.
Hi, sorry. Just because it's an SUP, I also need to swear in Ms. Braun and anybody else who would be doing a presentation. If that's okay.
Please
Can you
swear
see
them
me?
in.
You.
Anya, can you see me?
Yes, I can.
All right, Ms. Grahn, do you swear or affirm that the testimony or information that you will present tonight is the truth to the best of your knowledge?
I so affirm.
Thank you.
Do you also want to swear in the applicant while we're at this?
I'd be happy to do that, sure. Is it
Chuck
Mr.
Trimble? Are you on the
Mr.
line?
Trimble? Okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Mr. Trimble?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Trimble, do you swear or affirm the testimony or information you will give tonight is the truth to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Anya Gran with the Planning Department. I have about 6 slides, and this special use permit modification should only take about 5 minutes to present. So here's where we are in the process. We're asking you tonight to open the public hearing on this application. So again, staff is recommending that Council open the public hearing, receive public comment, and continue the public hearing to April 21st. A little bit of background on this project. Back in January of this year, Council had approved a limited scope of review for the special use permit. At that time, you gave us permission, I guess, to move forward with the proposed revision. And so back in 2017, when the SUP was approved, it required that construction start by 2019 and be completed in 2021. We're proposing to amend this to allow construction to start by the 2023 and be completed by 2025. As part of that 2017 special use permit or SUP modification, there was a condition of approval requiring that the applicant remove 2 storage trailers and replace them with storage sheds. So the applicant's current set of plans, which are shown here, currently reflect their compliance with this condition of approval. And by doing so, that increased the impervious surface by 197 square feet. It's a pretty minor modification, but we are calling it to your attention just to be completely transparent. So again, our recommendation is for the council to open the public hearing, receive public comment, and continue the public hearing to April 21st. I can answer any clarifying questions that you might have now, and the applicant is also here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Council members, any clarifying questions on this item? Okay, are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item?
Nope.
Okay, bring it back to council. Ms. Anderson?
I move we continue the public hearing to April 21st.
Second.
So moved by Ms. Anderson, second by Mr. Parker to continue the public hearing to April 21st. Any other comments that haven't been shared?
We opening the public hearing?
We continued the public hearing. It was opened by announcing it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay, roll call vote, please. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Boyncy?
Aye.
Ms. Gu?
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen?
Aye.
Ms. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Stegman?
Aye.
The mayor says aye as well. All right, this item is, and Ms. Anderson, you had something?
I'm
to share?
sorry. I just want to make sure that that was what was intended. Anya, was this intended to be for the hearing to be continued, or was it intended to be closed tonight so that the consideration could occur later?
I believe what we have on the agenda is for it to be to continue the public hearing to April 21st.
Okay, so another additional hearing will be held on the 21st.
Well, may I ask, is there a reason to do this? Could it not be closed tonight that we vote on the 21st? Or does it need to go to other boards and commissions? I mean, if we continue the public hearing, which we just did, to the 21st, then it would be May before we actually voted on the item. Is there a need, Anya, to continue this public hearing?
I don't think so. I think we could close it. Yeah.
So I think since there was no one to comment, you could close it this evening and have your 24 hours of additional public comment and hear it at whatever meeting it can appear on. I'm sorry, consider it at the next hearing.
Council will to do that?
Absolutely.
Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Anderson, second by Mr. Parker to actually close the public hearing and bring this item back on April 21st for an official vote. Does that work for folks? Okay. Roll call vote. Mr. Parker,
Aye.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Boyncy,
Aye.
Ms. Gu,
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen,
Aye.
Ms. Ryan,
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
The mayor says aye as well. So you see, you can undo council work in the same meeting on the same item.
So I don't mean to belabor that, but it could be because this is an SUP that was what was
Normally
being
have
done.
2 public hearings, and yes.
Right. And so I actually am asking Anya if what she prefers procedurally, but I'm not sure that we actually need to have a continuation of the public hearing. I mean, I think probably technically you could vote on it tonight, although that's an open question, and I prefer to be more conservative about it. But
Well, we'll bring it back on April 21st for a vote, or if
Okay.
y'all, yeah.
But I wasn't trying to hijack you, Anya. If you had a reason to do that, then okay.
No, I don't. I think it's fine to close the public hearing and take action on the 21st.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much. That moves us to item number 18. Open the public hearing for the Land Use Management Ordinance text amendments, proposed changes to section 3.6.2, the historic district, related to review the criteria and selected 8.4 historic district commissions. That didn't flow very well, so sorry. All right.
Okay, it's a mouthful. So good evening again, Anya Ground with the Planning Department. This item is for a land use management ordinance, or LUMO text amendment, related to the Historic District Commission and their review criteria. I have 13 slides, and this presentation should only take about 5 or 6 minutes. So staff recommends that the council open the public hearing, receive comments in this meeting and up to 24 hours via email at planning@townofchapelhill.org, move to close the public hearing at that point, and then enact the ordinance on April 21st. Here's where we are in the process. And again, we're just requesting that the council open and close the public hearing tonight. In your packet, you will find the staff report, Resolution A, the resolution of consistency, Ordinance A, approving the text amendments, Resolution B, denying the amendments, as well as recommendations from the Historic District Commission and the Planning Commission. So a little bit about why we're doing this text amendment. There have been some legislative updates to Chapter 160D of the North Carolina General Statutes that requires that the Historic District Commission adopt principles and standards that they can use in determining congruity when they review their certificate of appropriateness application. We are also proposing to remove the A through J criteria that is outlined in LUMO 3.6.2 completely, and that would require that the Historic District Commission rely solely on the design principles and standards when they're reviewing those certificate of appropriateness or COA applications. When we went to the HDC with our proposed text amendments, sorry that it keeps switching on us, the HDC asked that we amend the language so it more closely reflects the language in the State Historic Preservation's Office's Model Preservation Ordinance, and we've done that. And then I also wanted to point out that the HDC did adopt their updated design principles and standards last Thursday on March 18th. So here's what it looks like in 160D, and it's just, I've highlighted that it shows that it requires them to adopt principles and standards. Just a little bit discussion about guidelines versus design standards. So 160D does require that we replace the term guidelines with design standards. And this is really intended so that we clarify that the design criteria that we use, which has been the Historic District Design Guidelines, and now it's the Historic District Design Principles and Standards. It shows that the standards are mandatory. This is not just a guiding document or recommendations. And the COA decisions need to be based on design standards when the HDC is evaluating congruity with the special character of the historic districts. It can't just be a gut decision. And we know that's true of all quasi-judicial decisions. So just a little bit about the role of the design principles and standards. So we do have definitions within that document, and I've provided them here. But really the design principles are the background that serve as a narrative explaining the overarching concepts that inform the specific design standards. And then the design standards are the regulatory principles or requirements that we use to evaluate the COA applications. So the HDC should probably review the design principles to understand why the standards are written like they are, but at the end of the day, they're only enforcing the design standards and using those standards to review their COA applications. So here is where the text amendments are. Oops, going back, I apologize. So we've included these red line definitions in the text amendment summary that was attached to your staff report. And the following slides are just presenting the proposed text amendments. So again, we're replacing anywhere it says guidelines with design principles and standards. We also wanted to clarify here that staff has the ability to approve both certificate of appropriateness applications and amendments to COA applications if the amendment or the COA involves minor work. And that's the first red line that you see on this paragraph. Again, this page is showing more so that we were reflecting the language that was used in the state model ordinance. And then we had also heard that there was some interest in clarifying what the HDC has authority to approve and not approve. And so the LUMO already states that the HDC does not have authority over interiors. And so we've added number 3 here that says that they should also not consider plantings and other vegetation, because there's been some confusion about whether or not the HDC has authority over landscaping. And here we're just amending the 160A reference to actually follow 160D. So again, the recommendation before you tonight is for the town council to open the public hearing, receive comments in this meeting in up to 24 hours, move to close the public hearing at that point, and then enact the ordinance on April 21st. And I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Ms. Stegman?
Thanks, Anya. And I know you talked about this, but I'm still not quite understanding it. In terms of when the commission has a case for it, and there's the standards and the principles, I understand are kind of the spirit of, and then the standards are the very specific regulations or criteria to meet. So when approving or not approving, the board can't use the principles for that decision, but they're only supposed to use the standards. Is that right?
Correct. They should only be applying the design standards.
How, I guess some of the wording you just showed, how are we making sure anybody that comes before the board understands that, new board members coming in understand that, and that's the standard that's actually used? Because I could see how it could be, like, well, it says here this, but it says here that. Like, it still feels a little confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I think a lot of this is going to have to come with education of all of us, right? Of staff, of the Historic District Commission, of applicants, and understanding the purpose of the design standards and how that document functions. We've talked about different ways to organize it online so that it's clear that, just the design standards apply. I think there is some discussion within the document itself that talks about the HDC only being able to apply the design standards to COA applications, but that's probably something that we could call out and make more of a disclaimer on our web pages and in our application when it gets updated.
Yeah, I think that would be a really good idea, just to make it super, super clear to anybody, especially, if this is not what you do a lot, it could be pretty overwhelming to try to sort through it all. So I really appreciate any efforts to kind of separate them out a bit and make it really clear what's, of course, we want people to, really adhere to the spirit, but that in terms of that quasi judicial process, that there's specific criteria. Thanks.
Ms. Ryan?
And on one of your slides where you showed the number 3 for adding landscape plantings, I didn't see a number 2 on there about interiors. Was that just a typo?
That's actually, number 2 is language that's already existing in the LUMO, and we're not proposing to change.
You don't have to
put it out.
And I just wanted to add that I know that there's been concern in the past about making it clear that the commission doesn't regulate paint colors. So I would suggest an item 4 that just repeats that they don't have authority over that. I know that it states it in the design guidelines and principles, but I know there's an interest in the LUMO language itself, making clear where the limits of their authority lies.
That seems like an easy change and something we can add when we bring this back on April 21st.
Thank you.
Ms. Gu?
So I think I think it makes sense, and it makes them more consistent. I think that change, I actually support that. So that makes the design principle and the standards is the guiding documents. So I think that there are questions, I still hear questions from the community with regard to what is the process when the design principle and the standards are formulated or passed. Has it enough, or is there enough community input, like from different parts of the community? You know, there are homeowners, there are developers, and all, like, what is the process? Can you explain that? Because I think when people ask me that questions, I have a hard time to explain, given now how important that design principle and the standards are. If you can give some information, I think that would be helpful both for me and for the community.
So that is something that we've heard concerned about. You know, we started this project back in February of 2020, pre-pandemic, and we quickly found ourselves in the middle of a pandemic. And so throughout this past year, we've had a number of opportunities for the public to come out and speak. And so pre-pandemic in February, when we were still able to gather in person, we had a kickoff meeting. We had invited, you know, designers, architects that we routinely see in front of the HDC members, as well as members of the public. And I forgot the date of that, but it was like February 16th. And on that same day, we were able to have a committee kickoff meeting. Starting in March, when the consultant started making her revisions, you know, we were still kind of in flux during the pandemic and the start of it, not knowing exactly how we were going to move forward. And so we had committee members do individual reviews of the design standards, and all of the information has consistently been posted online so that the public can view it and provide comments as necessary. Then I think it was about June through last December, the committee would actually meet monthly or bi-monthly. And at those committee meetings, they would discuss certain aspects of the design standards and the revisions that were being proposed. And at those meetings, we also reserved the last 15 to 20 minutes at each meeting for public comment. And so there was another opportunity for members of the public to attend the meetings. The videos were posted online on the project webpage so that if you did miss the meeting, you had an opportunity to watch it. And we did accept, you know, emails, obviously, that were shared with the committee and the HDC. And then November, December through January and February, the HDC actually started reviewing specific components of the design standards and then the design standards themselves. And so those were at the HDC's regular meetings, and there was opportunity for public comment at that time as well. And I think as we go through this, now that the design standards have been adopted, you know, we're going to have to continuously find ways to educate. And I know the HDC has been talking a lot more about public engagement and how to, you know, talk to property owners and realtors and those working in the historic district to make sure that they're aware of the updated standards.
Yeah, I think that efforts will be appreciated because I actually heard many confusions about what the new process is going to be. And I try to convince them that this is a more straightforward, transparent, consistent process for everyone. But I think people need to understand that. So.
Okay. Do we have members of the public wishing to speak on this item?
Nope.
Ms. Anderson?
I'll move we close the public hearing and receive written public comments for 24 hours.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Anderson, second by Ms. Stegman. Are there any other comments that council members wish to share that haven't been shared? I'll just say I know this has been a long time in the works to get the designs, guidelines, standards, whatever term we're using now, put together to make things less confusing, more transparent, the clarification is what we're going for. And I know that we've all worked really hard, and I hope this is a big step in the right direction. So anyway, all right, I will call for a roll call vote. Mr. Parker?
Aye.
Ms. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Voincy?
Aye.
Ms. Gu?
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen?
Aye.
Ms. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Stegman?
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. So that closes the public hearing. We are still taking written comments, so please feel free to send those in to us, and we will see this back on April 21st with some of the suggestions that were made here tonight. Will the HDC be reviewing it again between our meeting and then?
They won't be. It'll just come in front of the town council.
Okay, just checking.
Thank you all.
Thank you. I'm glad your screen sharing worked better this time. PowerPoint. Thank you. All right. That brings us to our concept plan review this evening of the flats, which is 607 through 617 MLK Junior Boulevard and 121 Stinson Street. We have Ms. Johnson, I believe.
Good evening. I'm Judy Johnson with our planning department, and I'm here to present the flats, as the mayor said. And hopefully my screen sharing will go smoothly, like Anya's did. So the flats is a concept plan before you tonight. I'm going to briefly go through a couple of aspects of concept plans. I know you're familiar with this. A brief refresher: they are no decisions are being made tonight. It is feedback only. We're looking for a rough sketch from the applicant. Staff is not conducting a formal review, and instead a sketch is forwarded to you for feedback. If the applicant does decide to move forward with a formal submittal following tonight's meeting, there's a couple of options for them to consider: a special use permit, conditional zoning, or a development agreement. And the applicant has been advised to discuss their preferred process with the council this evening. So tonight, with that in mind, the recommendation is for adoption of the resolution, I believe it's 12, to transmit your comments to the applicant. Just to briefly touch on this, and the applicant I know will go through much greater detail. I'm just going to give you a brief overview. The property is located on Martin Luther King. It's on the west side between Stevens Street, which is the road right by Town Hall, so we're pretty familiar with that, and East Longview, where there is a relatively new traffic signal going in there. It's presently zoned residential 4. The proposal before you is about 200 units, roughly 600 to 650 beds. Looking at a 5 to 6 story building, they would be wrapping the parking deck, then with additional amenities for the residents. Here's a bit of a close-up of the site. So Martin Luther King is on the east side of that, and to the west is Stinson and Isley. You can see the existing property boundary there in green. These to the north on the screen there's 4 little cottages you probably have noticed them as you're driving up and down Martin Luther King. And then there's a couple of additional single family and smaller multifamily that is on this combined site. And this is the proposal before you tonight. I'm just briefly going to show you the location of this, again, the boundary of that property. And you can see the wrapped parking deck there in the on the south side of the project. And as we've been trying to do is to provide you a little bit of context for this property. So this is one of, has been identified as areas in our future land use map, which was adopted back last December. It is the South MLK focus group, sub-area C. And primary uses in this focus group are multifamily residential. And you can see the site is shown there marked with a star approximately. And so this area in the future land use map does show about 4 stories at the street with an up to 8-story at the core, with a interest on activation of the street frontage along this stretch of Martin Luther King. A little bit, another plan is our mobility and connectivity plan. There are BRT stations located both north and south of this site. There is a proposed multi-use path along this stretch of Martin Luther King, and looking at upgrades to the existing sidewalk and sharrows in this section. Other components of our comprehensive plan are the Parks Comp Plan and the Greenways Master Plan, and neither of these plans do have any facilities proposed in this area. And the Cultural Arts Plan does show called out as a major cross connector for opportunities for landscape and artistic treatments. And then we certainly would advise the applicant to consult with our cultural arts staff to understand more. Also in your packet are the comments from the Community Design Commission, which met back in February, as well as we're trying something new with our urban designer, Brian Peterson, to offer some feedback on this project to you. And those comments are also in your packet. I believe Brian's are on page 563. Primary comments we heard from the Community Design Commission were some concerns regarding the transition to the existing properties on adjacent nearby properties and as to the relative height between this and the adjoining existing dwelling units nearby. And that wraps up my presentation. Again, I'd recommend adoption of the resolution transmitting the comments to the applicant. The applicant is here. I believe George Reshley would be leading that team. And I'm here if you have any clarifying questions. If not, I will.
Judy, your sound is going in and out on us. So
is it? I'm so sorry.
I was going to ask you on the flume, that's just one of the uses for that category.
Yes.
So could you tell us the other several, please? Because that's just one.
And I don't know these off the top of my head, so I believe it's there's the multifamily, office, commercial, the typical standard uses that would be in that area of Martin Luther King.
Okay, just because the way you said it sounded like that was the only thing that we're
showing compliance with that plan.
Okay, just making sure because that was a little confusing. Ms. Ryan?
Just to add, I know that when the Planning Commission was working on the flume, we had talked extensively with Elisa about, since we're talking about downtown, perhaps growing up South Columbia, the importance of putting an office component in there as a potential primary use also.
Okay. All right, we'll hear from the applicant then.
Let me share my screen. Good evening, Mayor Henniger and members of the council. George Ritchley here with Ballantyne Associates. I'm here tonight with Jeff Davis of J. Davis Architects and Bruce Ballantyne. I'm going to walk you through some of the existing conditions on the property and general location. Although Judy has done a great job of that, so I'll try to keep my part of it pretty brief. Jeff's going to discuss the project, the building, and some of the things that we have done already in response to some comments received from the CDC and from Brian Peterson. Just an overview showing the location again. It's on the west side of MLK, just north of Town Hall. The main point of this slide, not to repeat everything that Judy has said, is that it shows some of the similar type facilities across the street, the Union, the Lark, and the University Apartments, all very similar in scale and in size to the project that we're proposing tonight. Also shows the proximity of the planned BRT stations roughly within a half mile of the site. It shows that we have, there are two bus stops. One is literally right in front, on the front corner of the property. So it's very transit oriented site. Next slide is zoning. R4 zoning is the existing zoning here across the street. We've got RSSC, ONI1. Back to the future land use map plan that Judy showed. I did want to make one point in that this we think that this project that we're proposing is really supported by this future land use map. It fits with all the descriptions that are included in the future land use map, and we feel like it's the right type of use and layout for this site. Again, existing conditions: the site slopes from Isley Street down toward MLK. It's got several existing small homes on it and a small multi-purpose or multi-family building. Excuse me. Jeff Davis will show you how we've designed the building and the site to work with the existing topography. It kind of steps down the hill from Isley down toward MLK. This is just a high-level overview of the initial kind of don't want to call it a massing diagram, but a yield study basically plan that we proposed initially. And again, that was before any comments were received from the CDC or Brian Peterson. And this is a little bit more zoomed in version of the plan. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Davis, who will walk you through some of the points regarding this plan and his building design.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as George said, this is a concept yield study.
We can barely hear you.
Oh,
Yeah, having trouble hearing you, Jeff.
is this any better?
No.
Well,
That's better. Your hump was better.
is this better?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Sorry, I'll talk loud. How's that?
It's better.
Pardon me?
That's better.
Okay, sorry guys, I do apologize. Not sure what's going on. Hopefully my computer's not ready to crash or die. This was, as George said, a concept yield study, really just trying to understand what would work on the site and, you know, sort of meet the developer's program for a student housing development. It wraps a parking deck on the south and wraps a courtyard on the north. So that's just the basic sort of partie of the plan. We were required to have a fire truck access on the Isley Street side. So you can sort of see that as well. And this was the plan we went to, and I should also say the biggest challenge on this site is the topography. Just diagonally from the lowest northeast corner to the southwest corner, there's a 32-foot change in grade. And generally it's, you know, through the, you know, that A section and through the B section, it's sort of, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of, I guess, an average of 26-7 feet. So that's kind of the challenge. I did list the comments here, but we can look at those a little later. Let's just look at the sections, and I think it'd be great just to sort of get further down the road to the new iteration. So this was the concept section on the yield study, so you can sort of understand that we're 5 stories on Isley Street. 7 stories, because there's really almost you know, it's almost impossible to make up the grade. It falls so dramatically along the pool car yard side. On the other, through the parking deck, it's 5 stories and 6 stories. And we haven't made any effort to adjust the scale of the building or anything at this point. This is just sort of straight up what we're, you know, our investigation of the of the yield study. Next slide, George. These are a couple of 3D sort of insertions into Google Earth to give a better sense of how the organization works. You can see the kind of step back along the 2 blocks on MLK. The Union, the Lark, University Apartments right across the way. This is looking obviously toward downtown. Another slide looking north. Next slide. And this was our next iteration. We had comments from the council, I mean from CDC, and also from Brian that were, you know, and that we tried to address in this iteration. And we really tasked with enhancing the building's relationship to MLK by enhancing the pedestrian experience, activating the building facade, and transitioning the scale and height. One of the simple things they asked at CDC was, can you please move this building closer to the street, which, you know, we were happy to do. And it also helped us on the Isley Street side to develop that edge. And then, you know, the other, I think, basket of comments was on the Isley Stinson Street neighborhood, and, you know, really tasked with reducing and transitioning the buildings, you know, the building height and scale along that edge. Creating, and this is one that Brian really emphasized, creating sort of a 360-degree pedestrian path around the building that would really link that neighborhood to MLK and to the bus stop, which you can see in the lower left-hand corner of the plan. Providing a neighborhood amenity. We have this kind of interesting residual chunk of land at the northwest corner that we really didn't have any real plans for, and we think it would be a great neighborhood amenity that we could share between the development and the neighborhood. A few of the things we've done, without getting into a whole lot of detail, is that we have stepped the buildings along Isley. We've stepped the buildings back. We've created townhouses that have a nice kind of a little more of a residential scale, and then stepped back approximately 10 feet on the left, a little less on the right-hand side, and then broken those two blocks in the middle. So they both have different characters and textures, and broken them in the middle with an entry to the garage. That is the upper level entry off of Isley into the building, where drop-offs, the mail will be delivered, those sort of things, meals, takeout, all that sort of stuff. And on the MLK, we've got a lot going on trying to activate and enhance that whole experience. We've created on the parking deck block also stoops, townhouses stacked, and then stepping back units on top of those, again, another 10 feet or so after 4 stories. So it's 4 and then 2 above that. And I should have said stacked townhouses on the Isley Street side as well. So those stack 4 stories and then step back 1. And I think we were careful to have a single curb cut. We thought that was kind of important. So all parking in the development is in the parking deck. There's no surface parking anywhere, and so visitors and residents and future residents would all park in the deck. On the right-hand side, I guess the north block along, we've looked at ways of really penetrating the building with sort of a portal where you can actually, 3-story opening where you can look through into the court, creating 3 stories, or I'm sorry, 2, transparency on the lower 2 floors into the building amenity, and the developers proposing student incubator space and programming that and managing that. To be determined how that'll work, but I think that could be kind of an exciting activation of the facade. Community terrace, which with all the student activity in that little node, sharing some of this building with others, I think could be a successful strategy. And I'm not sure how the public art would work. We like the idea of sort of a linear art park that we'd work with the town in developing. And yeah, and you can see the connection on the north side of the building up to the neighborhood park. And I'm not sure if I'm sure I'm missing something, but let's move to the sections. So this is through the deck. You can kind of see how the townhouses stack, how there'd be stoops at the ground level, and those upper level units step back as a scale reducing strategy. Next slide. This was the portal I was talking about, where you can actually see through to the courtyard. Again, stepping back on Stimson, and the site is limited how much we can step back along the MLK in this block, but you know, we are looking at different strategies for kind of creating a scale sort of, I guess, lack of another word, as kind of a scale reduction strategy through change of materials and window patterns and those sort of things. Next slide. Yeah, we did manage to get one from the Isley Street neighborhood, looking over at the other student developments. Next, looking north and looking south. And these are just some precedent images that we like to work from. These are projects we've done, other people have done, just ways of trying to understand how we can work with, you know, scale, materials, color to sort of create an interesting, exciting building, but also bring it a little more into scale. And we're open for questions. Or Bruce, did you want to weigh in?
I did, Jeff. If I think that the host has to let me in here. Well, I guess you can't see my video, but can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hold on, Bruce. Let me stop sharing the screen. You go ahead and share now.
We can hear you, Bruce.
All right, good. Well, Mayor Heminger and council members, I'm Bruce Ballantyne, and the project team has asked me to address tonight the strategies that we've been investigating for how this project could address and help with the town's affordable housing situation. So we've looked at a number of different ideas. Of course, we're still in concept phase, so we don't have a specific plan to present to you tonight, but I did want to share with you where we were on the various options we've been looking at. So first, we could always, as some other projects have done, we could always offer a payment in lieu, but we know that this council and previous councils have always preferred an actual improvement to be made in this regard rather than a payment. And so even though that may be an option, and it may be the option that ultimately is selected, it's not one that we're thinking is going to be best for the town right now. We've also begun discussions, since this is a rental project and it's a student housing project. We've also started discussions with UNC to see if there is a way that it might be possible for this project to assist with certain students that are on assistance that might marry up with an affordable housing solution. But we also realize that may not be your primary goal, and you may want to assist other families in town that are in need of affordable housing. So we have a unique solution that we think, or a unique option that we want to present to council tonight. One of our development partners, Russ Greer, in a previous career, his role was to upgrade substandard public housing. And he did that for a number of years on many projects very successfully. He did it while residents were occupying their dwellings and also when they were not. And so we've had one meeting with your housing staff. We've got another one scheduled. We'll continue these discussions, but I think both your staff and we would like to see if that is an option that this council would like for us to continue pursuing. We think it makes a lot of sense. If you have any public housing units in town that are substandard that you don't have funds to renovate, then this might be a way of doing it. And it's a way that, as I said, Russ has done that many times. He knows how to do it, and it might be worth pursuing. So one other option, knowing that your preference is to actually have your residential developers actually build affordable housing units, we realize that one of our existing public housing, our existing purpose-built student housing projects across MLK, the Union actually built some townhouses along Hillsborough Street. I want you to understand their site is quite a bit different than ours. Theirs is a much bigger site. It extends all the way from MLK to Hillsborough Street. They had a very nice solution that worked for their site. They could very easily build those townhouses on Hillsborough and have the student housing main entrance off of MLK. The two were on the same piece of property, but in fact, they're quite separate. We don't have that option. We could if our property extended all the way to North Columbia, but it does not. It's rather shallow. You've seen the site plan where to make this project feasible, most of the site, if not all of the developable site, is taken up by the building. So that is why we don't want to pursue that solution. We don't think that makes sense here. Doesn't make sense either to put a family inside of a student housing purpose-built facility. It'd be like trying to put a family inside of a dorm on campus. So our solution at this point, the one that we hope that you will ask us to continue to pursue, is the renovation of existing public housing. So that's as far as we've taken that. We just want to throw those ideas out, and in particular, the one that we would like to pursue. So I really await your response to that. And with that ends our presentation, and we're available for Q&A.
Thank you. I'll just throw in Mr. Valentine, since you're familiar with this other project. I think we would be in agreement that mixing families with student housing may not be the most ideal solution, but our true interest is increasing our affordable housing stock and providing more options for folks. And so I'd like you, as you're moving along, to consider maybe sponsoring a current project that's increasing affordable housing, like the Habitat Weavers Grove, where you would actually sponsor some habitat housing, or the CASA project, or any other partnerships that we have where you would directly sponsor some additional units for other families in the community. So I throw that option as there are other options out there, but to not restrict ours to just this or that, but there may be other opportunities as well. So,
well, I like your suggestion of supporting Weavers Grove and Habitat. Thank you for that suggestion. Do I take it then that the council does not want us to pursue the renovating of existing public housing?
I don't know that. I haven't heard from council yet, but I just want to say that there ought to be a variety of options as council's considering this overall project, but a variety of options for supporting affordable housing, not limited to those. So I just throw that out as an additional option.
Thank you.
I do know that we've had discussions with the university and some other students that are in the Covenant program where they're fully sponsored. The university has some programs they've informed us to help those students, so they weren't as engaged in that discussion as well. So
thank you.
All right. Council members, I bring it back for clarifying questions, and then we can do comments after clarifying questions. Ms. Ryan.
Can you tell me how many feet long the front facade is along MLK?
Approximately 400 feet long.
Okay. And the plans show your narrative talks about 5 to 6 stories, but the building is 7 in some places, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the narrative was written early on, and one of the building solutions that we came up with was to help make that grade change, was to add that extra story, and Jeff can speak to that a little bit more.
Jeff, you're muted.
My computer died. That was probably what was wrong before. So I just got back into the Zoom. What was the question?
The question was about the height. We had in our narrative, we had 5 and 6 stories, but we ended up with that seventh level. And I was explaining it's because of that low corner of the site.
Right. I mean, we could build retaining walls and pick that whole corner of the site up, but that didn't make a whole lot of sense. We really like the idea of finding a use for that lower level. And that was kind of part of our conversations that led to this idea of incubator space that could, we're not gaining housing density at that level, but it's better than sort of picking the whole building up and creating retaining walls out on the sidewalks. So, or starting at the sidewalk, trying to pick the building up so that it's, because it really steps almost the story from the corner of the northeast corner to the southeast corner. And that's really the biggest challenge on the site, I think.
Other clarifying questions, Ms. Tegman?
Could you please say more about the townhomes that you've added? How many are there, and what size, how many bedrooms? Are they, they're also intended for students? But...
Yeah, they're student housing townhouses, but instead of being, how stacking flats, each level is a little different. So you have a living room and one bedroom. They're like 24 or 5 feet wide. So you have a bedroom and a living area side by side on the ground level, and then 2 bedrooms on the upper levels linked by a stair. And then we've stacked another townhouse on top of that. It'll just have a nice scale. For example, a 4-bedroom student apartment unit is like 50 feet wide. So these will have a little more, a different scale, more opportunity to create a little more of a residential feel. And then, having a stoop at the lower level where you can enter and leave, obviously, is a scale strategy as well.
You don't feel like those are kind of separate enough that they could be affordable housing units?
That's a good question. I mean, they're open to the corridor that's common to the, there is a corridor that wraps inside into those units. I'm the wrong person to sort of ask to answer that question.
Hey, Jeff.
A mingling of the affordable housing population and the students.
Jeff, this is Russ Greer. What I would say from a programming standpoint, it's extremely, that's the bigger issue, is how are you running the property on a day-to-day basis? And I think with everything interconnected with the families and with the student, it's just a different programming. I mean, I have certainly done family housing, I've done affordable housing, I've done conventional apartments, and student is different than all 3 of those. So I'm just saying, and what I've said to our team is that from a programming standpoint, it's extremely difficult to satisfy the different options. So that's the biggest issue. It's not that, you physically can't do it. It's just, how do you program it? So that's the conflict that I think when with a site like this and the density that you have to have and the narrowness of the site, it's virtually impossible to please everybody.
Russ, the 2 options that I heard from the mayor that sound like they would be the best fit for us and the council is looking at contributing towards Habitat's project of affordable housing and then also continuing to pursue the connection with the university and, or maybe a combination of those two.
Right.
I'd like to hear from other council members if they agree with that summary.
We're just in the clarifying questions right now, so they'll come back and share with you their thoughts, and they may say they want renovations of home. I just thought there were more options than the one you're offering. So I have
Thank
Mr. Boyncey followed by Ms. Gu for clarifying questions.
Yes, I've got two questions. So I'm wondering about how much of a step back it is at the, I think it's the 6th level that's along MLK Boulevard. From the drawings, the width between that front edge of the lower levels and the edge of the upper levels, it looked quite narrow, but
yeah, on the section through the courtyard you're referring to.
Yeah, okay, I thought.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that particular section, there is just a very small step back at that location. We didn't have the depth because the townhouses are much deeper than the regular units. So we're sort of depending on other kind of design strategies in that one section of the elevation, rather than trying to step back as much as we were in the other 3 sections of the building.
Jeff, you had some considerable discussion with Brian Peterson about architectural treatment of that and how to make that work. And it sounds like the two of you were in agreement on a number of strategies there.
Yeah, and I think as we move forward, we'll present precedents of how this has been handled and really let others, CDC and council, decide whether it's a successful strategy or not. But we think we can make it work.
Okay. Then my second question is, I'm just curious about the terrace that's in the design. I'm wondering how far off the road that would be.
Well,
I think it's along MLK.
I think the cool thing about that terrace is because that is such a low spot on the site, we would pick that terrace up with a retaining wall. So probably at the it's probably 6 or so above grade. I think you could, we'll figure out a way to access it, obviously, from MLK, the sidewalk and MLK, but it would sit up above the sidewalk and above the street. So, and be on the level as that lowermost level of the building.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, because I see what you mean. It looks like it was just spilling out onto the street.
Yeah.
In the drawing.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure. Ms. Gu and Mr. Parker.
Yeah, well, given that its location and it's the very wide frontage of this proposal, I think that it is going to have significant impact on the character of that corridor. I'm sure that you're aware this MLK in our town's future land use plan is a transit corridor. So we are hoping it's the direction that we're going to transform that corridor that's less car centered, less car dependent, and want it to be more like transit oriented and encouraging those more active kind of transportation mode, like biking around or walking around. I think especially given this parcel actually pretty close to our town's the future parking deck. So I don't know what you think about this. Like, why is it necessary to have such a huge parking space and have it all the apartments wrap around? This is really, it's not something that's almost only thing that we have been seeing around town. And I'm really getting an earful of that kind of design. I don't know if you can, can you justify or if you're open to other kind of like vision for this project?
Well, the sad reality. Russ, did you want to answer that?
Well, I just wanted to mention that, yeah, it's interesting comment, Ms. Gu. We listened to council on a previous project of ours, which was called the Bicycle Apartments at the time, and now it's called the Lark. And that project ended up with a greatly reduced parking count. And at the time, everyone applauded that. We thought it would work. Turns out that the students that did not have parking spaces there ended up leasing all the available parking spaces in town and caused a rather significant problem. In fact, it's one that really can't be fixed. We believe for student-built public housing in Chapel Hill, those automobiles and those spaces are mainly used to store the cars, particularly during the workday. They're used to drive to and from home. They're used a little bit on the weekends, but the students are they're gonna walk, bike, or take the transit to campus every day. So we really think it's also important that we listen to the applicant, listen to the developer that does this and knows how many cars that are needed to make this succeed.
So you're saying that it's necessary to have that number of parking spaces,
Well,
even though
well,
I think
these parking spaces are expensive. If we don't need them, we don't want to build them. Structured parking is very expensive.
Ms. Gu, this is Russ Greer again. I would tell you, in a parking structure like we've got planned, you're talking $12,000 to $15,000 a parking space. And if we didn't need them, like Bruce said, we certainly wouldn't build them. However, I've competed in different markets from Reno, Nevada to, all the way across the East Coast. You see guys all the time that try to develop properties and say, we're going to park it at point. I think, Bruce, I can't remember exactly, but I think bicycle was like at 0.25 per
right.
bed.
Right.
And I've been in city council meetings when, they tell me, well, this project just got approved at 0.25 spaces per bed. And I tell them, you know what? Great for that developer. He has confidence in that. But I'm going to tell you the worst thing that you can ever do is live in a place that you can't park because you're going to be leaving the first time your lease comes up for renewal. Because if you can't park, you don't want to live there. Or if you have friends come to visit you and they can't park, it becomes an annoyance. And as the city and as a property owner, you're not looking for vacancy. You want it to be fully occupied. So I just know through experience that you don't need to park. I mean, I would tell you most suburban type stuff that I do, that's 3-story walk up, not urban style. We park 1.1 to 1.2 per bedrooms. Urban, I think this, Jeff, correct me, but I think it's maybe at 0.7, 0.8.
Yeah, around 0.7, what he's talking about, because we're talking.
Right. Now, if this was
code, it's 0.7 cars per bedroom per student. And that's the sad reality, is that 80% of the kids that are renting these apartments will have cars.
Right.
And
so we just finished a project. We finished a project in downtown Reno, Nevada. And we parked that one at, I think, about 0.55, which, I mean, literally it's downtown Reno, Nevada. And that one I think will be okay. But Chapel Hill is not, it's not downtown Chicago. It's not downtown Atlanta. It's not urban. You don't have, the transit. You don't have the trains. You don't have everybody come from the suburbs in. So I feel like the parking that we're proposing is reasonable.
So what is your current ratio for parking per unit?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit.
What's your current parking ratio per unit?
0.7, I think they just said.
0.7 per bed.
7 per bed.
Can I just build on Ms. Gu? We do have a new parking garage going in, not too far from there. We're actually thinking the Lark students will probably want to rent spaces in that parking garage as well. And the university also has a parking area out by Horace Williams Airport area where they have capacity for more student cars. And the students use it because we have the bus system and we'll have the BRT. There's great access to getting to and from the cars. So we do have other options that may not be available in some of the cities you've worked in. So just adding that there are other options.
I appreciate that, and we are very happy, I mean, to explore those options. What I would want to do is secure some type of, agreement where I know that we can accommodate our residents, but we're fully willing to explore that and look into it.
Ms. Gu, did you have other questions?
No, I'm done.
Okay, Mr. Parker, then Mr. Nguyen.
Oops, I have a few. So first is, I was wondering, as you think about amenities and, I saw the park and, it's nice, but how do you see this building relating to the adjoining neighborhoods? Do you see any of the amenities besides that little park being available to the community, or is everything that's being built here really reserved to the residents?
Well, the building is secured, Councilmember Parker. It's secured, so it really is for the residents, other than what's outside of the building. So the sidewalks in the neighborhood park, they are for the community to use as well as the residents.
Okay, and the next question is, I was really sort of maybe the late hour or my density, but I was really sort of struggling to understand what the heights were at, particularly along the Martin Luther King, streetscape. As you saw from the flume, we're really looking at 4 stories at the street and then, going back up from there. And it looked like it was going to be 6 stories at the street, the 4 floors of townhomes and 2 floors on top of it. So I want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly.
You are, and what Jeff was explaining is that he was taking an avenue of trying to architecturally treat that so that the building would be broken up and it wouldn't appear as readily as a 6-story building. But you're correct.
It's 4 stories and then stepping back and then 2 stories above that.
And how far does it step back?
Between 9 and 10 feet.
That's not a whole hell of a lot. Okay.
But Councilmember Parker, understand there's 2 different, there are really 2 different buildings here. There's the southern one that wraps the parking deck.
Yep.
That's the one that has the 10-foot setback.
Right.
At 4 stories, which is what ideally would be the situation. On the north, where it's the courtyard, that's the one that has the lesser step back.
And so, so effectively, it's pretty much a 6-story frontage on MLK.
Well, structurally it is, physically it is, architecturally it would not be like other buildings that are broken up by materials and some articulation. But you're generally correct.
And what is so then when we go back to the neighborhood side, again, what is the actual height in stories at the back, at the Isley entrance, at the Isley side of it?
It's 4 feet. It is 4-story, and then it steps back 10 feet.
And then it goes up how many more stories after the step back?
One more.
So it's a total of 5.
Can we show that section?
I'm good. So okay. The next question is, as I recall, I forget which one of the streets near I think whether it's Isley or Stimson is not paved right now. Would you be open to paving that street, particularly you're going to be generating a lot of traffic going in and out of the building, it seems like there's going to be a lot of wear and tear on a street that's not physically able to accommodate it.
Well, we've already thought about that. If this project moves forward, generally in the scale that it is now, we think that that's something that makes sense if you do.
And can you just talk about, how wide do you, again, I'm very bad at reading drawings. How wide is the garage entrance off of MLK? I mean, when we talk about an activated streetscape, I don't generally think about a garage entrance as being one of the key elements in activating a streetscape. So how, is it,
probably
how
20
wide is it and how, what?
2 lane,
feet.
2 lane.
Which is what,
20,
about 25
20 feet. Yeah.
20 feet. Okay.
Yeah, and if you think about that entire street frontage is only having one curb cut, it really is quite reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Nguyen?
Yeah, I just had one quick question for the project team. Do y'all have any plans to engage with the north side neighbors around this concept plan?
Well, if that's something that the council wants us to do, we're not actually in that neighborhood, but what specifically should we be doing there as far as coordinating with that neighborhood? Just communication?
Yeah, I would love for there to be some engagement with the neighborhood. Do you have a sense of how far away you are from the conservation district border?
Well, we will do that if you would like us to.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Ms. Anderson, did you have questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I wanted to ask a couple. We've talked about the front and the back height. What about the neighbors to the south and to the north? Can you show us who they are? I think it's our Adelaide Walters housing there.
Well, let me, there is not a step back. Well, there might be, in our latest plan, Jeff, do we have any? We do have a setback on the north, don't we, in your latest plan?
No.
No, all right. One thing that we did that was obvious to us as we tackle this rather small site is that in your flume, in your master plan, if you think about the scale of the buildings that are proposed in text form in that master plan, somebody's got to go first. Somebody's got to go first, and whoever does, it's not going to be in scale of who's around it. There's no way we can make this project work with a two-story building. And so if we keep whittling it down, whoever goes first, whether it be this project or someone else, if it gets whittled down to match the scale of the buildings around it, no project's going to be feasible. Nobody's going to go first.
That wasn't really my question. My question was, what does it look like next to the neighbors there, please?
There is no step back on the sides.
And next door is Adelaide on the one side, on the south side, and what's to the north side?
Some townhouses.
And the townhouses are 2-story?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. And then
Bruce, on the south side, we're dropping down. So the senior housing that's on the other side of us, the scale is not, I mean, it changes a lot. We've got a big retaining wall on the south side. Right. So we're dropping down. So I would tell you to the south. I mean, again, I'm not an architect or an engineer, but as a layman, I'm telling you from the south going north, it's minuscule. On the south side where everything's falling, I mean, on the north side, excuse me, where the topo is falling, there is a certain difference in that scale. My 2 cents.
Ms. Anderson, did you want to add on to that? I have another question after this.
I did. I just had a question for our staff about what guidance is being given to applicants about our future land use map, because it sounds like there's an expectation on the part of this applicant that this is what we're expecting current day. And my understanding is that it's 2050. And so it's not necessarily meant to be this idea that going first means that somebody just has to dwarf everything around it, I guess is maybe not my understanding, but I would like to understand what the development community or what this applicant is being told about our flume.
So we haven't given a whole lot of guidance because the document's only been adopted for a couple of months now. So just that is, looking at that is the council's vision of where we're heading. And if it's, I haven't drawn any conclusion other than that says a 4-story at the street and up to 8 stories, that we're looking for the mix of uses that are identified in that. And that's the vision that we're seeking long-term.
Okay, thanks. You can go ahead, Pam.
Okay, can you tell me if I live on Isley or Stinson and I want to walk through this property to get to the bus stop on MLK, what that looks like? Am I doing a lot of stairs? Am I coming through the building? What is the proposal?
On the south side, we've figured out with a little bit of retaining wall help along the property line that we can have a 5%, which is an accessible grade from the Isley Stimson neighborhood all the way down to MLK, to really terminating in the bus stop that's there currently. We don't think we can do that on the north side of the building. The grade is just too steep. So there would be steps in that one, but we would have that, an accessible route from the top to the bottom.
And you're planning on deliveries and such coming down Stinson or Isley to access the building? Was that what I heard in the presentation?
We think that that's the easiest for deliveries and for mail and for packages would be along that street that we've had to build anyway for fire truck access for vehicles to stop and deliver and move on, rather than driving into the garage and driving back out of the garage.
Well, that's a lot of pressure on that street. And if the council members haven't walked over there, there's a lot of people and parked cars. It's a very narrow street too. And it's not, one of them's not paved. I can't remember which one's not paved, but
right,
yeah, that's kind of interesting. Okay.
It's not either way. I mean, we can do it the other way too. I mean, that's something to investigate for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. All right, this is open for the public to make comments. Do we have anyone from the public here? I see a raised hand. Mr. Parker,
Yes, we have, so far we have Martin Johnson is the only one so far.
Okay. Welcome.
Welcome, thanks. I would just like to support or encourage them to consider disaggregating the charge of the parking from the charge of the rentals. And I think that would be interesting to model that demand, because I really think that people are changing. Young people are learning to drive later. There's less demand for cars. And we just saw with the thing the council approved earlier, the Columbia Street Annex, that the price drops 10% if you don't include a parking space. So I'd really encourage to charge for parking at this site and to model that and see what the demand is like. If students really want a car, they'll be willing to pay $100 a month to park in that garage, or they can find another place nearby that might be a little bit cheaper.
Thank you.
So thanks.
Thank you.
That is everyone who has raised a hand. No one signed up.
Okay. So bring it back to council comments. Ms. Anderson, followed by Mr. Nguyen. I'll get you all, so just hang in there.
Thanks. Well, I guess and I'm sorry, I'm a little tired, but I want to start with the big picture, which is how much student parking, student housing do we want and where do we want it? So I think it's important that we think about, and maybe this is a request for the mayor and the manager to kind of revisit or restart, or maybe it's going, but the housing study that with UNC, I think is really important to understand how much student housing we need to be providing versus the university, what their projections are for the future, et cetera. And I do think it comes down to trade-offs. So we are going to have a very large parking garage and a very large office building down the street. And I think, we want to be housing people who might be working there, and others who are working on campus. I think it's unfortunate that this is coming right before our LUMO rewrite, but I think in order to kind of avoid the Blue Hill Berkshire issue that we've had, we have to think really carefully about the dimensions, design, block sizes. I think some of the things like even that visibility, which we found out after the fact was really important to people, to not just be able to walk somewhere and have it be permeable space, but also to be able to see to where they're trying to get, was something I think we kind of figured out later. I think, again, Councilmember Ryan said it really well. As we think about if this is really going to be an extension of our downtown, then what does that mean and how do we want it to work? So I think that's kind of my big picture thought about this. I do think this does feel looming to me compared to the existing neighborhoods. It's a very large Texas donut. So we are on right next to downtown and very close to our BRT line. We're prioritizing cars, right? And I think that we're just, I think we're prioritizing a lot of placemaking goals in order to have a lot of parking spaces. And I think just generally there's another student housing application coming. So again, we just need to think about how does this all work together? How much student housing do we want where? And how much, again, I think too, this I would really like to see if we're considering this an extension of our downtown, then obviously at least the bottom floor needs to be activated, all that stuff. But the bigger issue too is that parking. And again, what is student housing supposed to look like? Where does it go? Where does it work? And how much do we need to do?
And can I ask each of you to say what your preference is, if affordable housing component would be, if you were considering something, which ones interested you? And it doesn't mean, just want to hear if you're interested in the rehab of existing public housing, if you're interested in of other partnerships, sponsorships, whatever, or if you're interested in, well, we've all said as a council, we're not as interested in payment in lieu, but you're welcome to say whatever you want to say. So you could just give, and you can say you're interested in all of the options. Just want to hear, the developers asked to hear that. So.
I mean, I'm definitely more interested in giving to partner projects. I don't really understand why we would. I mean, we have money and we have other things where we can do our public housing. I may be missing the boat on that in some way, or there's a need there that I don't know about. But as far as based on what I understand and I know, I'm much less interested in that and much more interested in something that our partners are doing, or 2200 Homestead, Weaver's Grove, something like that. And no, thank you on payment in lieu, that I would rather avoid.
So creating more units, is that, maybe I should phrase it better, you're creating more units rather than payment in lieu or a rehab.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to make it more clear. I don't think I'm making it worse. All right. I forget who I said next. Mr. Wynn, it was you. Was it? Yeah, Mr. Wynn, and then we'll go to Ms. Stegman.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate the concept plan and the openness around affordable housing. I pulled up a map and I believe this parcel, if I'm counting correctly, is 7 parcels away from the Northside Conservation District. And so, you know, I definitely want to see more intentional engagement with the North Side neighbors. I know we want multifamily and to move our core up MLK, but, you know, emphasis on the family part, seeing the impacts of student housing on North Side over the years, and, you know, being a part of that not too long ago and seeing Lark across the street and the impacts that's had on North Side. I'm just, you know, not supportive of putting another 200, 300, 400 students essentially right next to North Side. And then, you know, on the affordable housing stuff, I don't see how investing in units elsewhere helps to mitigate the negative impacts of that student housing right next to North Side. I mean, I'd be open to exploring other uses for that, you know, for the development. But I guess my feedback is this is, you know, student housing right there, especially at this density, is definitely a non-starter for me.
Ms. Stegman? Then Mr. Boynton?
I agree with Councilmember Anderson's question about student housing, and that we need a better projection of what the needs are and where it should go. I share Councilmember Nguyen's concern about the impact on North Side. I feel like I'm hearing you say, you meaning the applicant, say, well, the site's so small, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do that, and put all those units there, assuming we want all those units rather than buffers and setbacks and all the things that we do want. And so I think it's just too much for that site. I don't support that much building on that site, period. Also, the parking deck feeding onto Isley and Stinson is just absolutely a no for me. I lived on Isley and Stinson. Two cars don't even fit on that road. You have to like pull over and let the other car go and, you know, wave and say, oh, thanks for letting me go. So the idea, you know, it's not paved. You know, they're barely roads. They're a couple of houses on a narrow road with very deep culverts on either side. The idea that you're going to use that to funnel parking deck traffic and deliveries is absurd, and that just, it doesn't fit, it doesn't work. It's not fair to the residents of those streets. This is not just like a, oh, well, it's low density and high density, we got to make it work together. That's just not feasible or fair. So I won't support anything that has a parking deck and Amazon deliveries up and down those roads. For the affordable housing, definitely want units, don't want a payment in lieu. And, you know, I would support hypothetically a plan that supports our partners as we've talked about, or possibly our RAD conversion could be another opportunity, but it would have to be significant. We're not just talking about sponsoring a couple of habitat homes. It would have to be a really significant investment. You know, we use 15% as an estimate, which, you know, that's 30 plus units. So I would like to see something very substantial there. I do like the stacked town houses. If we could go more that direction and that works better in that space, I think that, you know, there could be something there. And I also support the comments about, you know, this, we talk about transit-oriented development, we want transit-oriented development, and then we don't get it. You know, this needs to be a creative and innovative opportunity, whether it's separating parking in the units, as Mr. Martin had said, Mr. Johnson said, you know, incentivizing not having cars, not owning cars, not using cars, and using all the wonderful transit that we have in this town and the more that is coming. That's the kind of thing I want to see there. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, Mr. Boynton, then Ms. Gu, then Mr. Parker, and I'll get you Ms. Ryan down here. Okay. Doing the Hollywood Squares here. Here we go.
Understood. So yeah, I'm interested in support for increasing the number of affordable units, not a payment in lieu. And I agree with Ms. Stegman that it would need to be a significant investment. The size and the scale of the building relative to the homes nearby is a bit jarring to me, as is the amount of parking. I mean, there needs to be a better transition, and the way I'm thinking about transition is respect for those nearby homes and families. It's not just any neighborhood, it's a historically African-American neighborhood, which has experienced tremendous pressures on the residents. And to Mr. Wynn's question about engagement with current residents, if the applicant chooses to move forward, I would strongly recommend that in addition to reaching out to nearby residents in Northside, that you also reach out to Empowerment and the Marion T. Jackson Center, both of which do a great deal of work connecting with residents about proposed projects which could impact the neighborhood. The points made earlier about infrastructure, I think, are critical ones because those are some very narrow roads around there. And with the amount of parking this project could yield, that aggravates issues around safety, walkability. That's all I've got.
Ms. Gu, then Mr. Parker.
Well, I think I agree with many comments that are already expressed by my other council colleagues. I just feel this project is just oversized for this parcel. And it's jarring, that amount of units that you are intended to put in and the number of parking spaces. I think that, well, if you look at what the town has been adding in the past decade, a significant number of them are apartments and a lot of them are just for student housing. So we're just spreading out the UNC students all across the town. And I think that significantly impacted the town's character. I'm not in general against any kind of housing, but I think it's very important for the town when we're offering the housing. I think it's very important that we have to diversify our housing supply. Otherwise, that it has significant impact with regard to not only housing, it also has significant impact on the economy. It's going to be very fragile when our housing supply is so emphasizing only one sector of the apartments. I don't think that is overall is a good idea to adding that kind of supply, continuously adding only that kind of supply to our town's overall housing profile. I don't think that's healthy with regard to the housing market or to the town's overall health of the economy. I don't think that's a good idea. And second, of course, I strongly feel that I want our transit corridor to work. I think it's very, very important if the town has the vision of adding to manage our increased density, to provide more housing to all the people, especially for the low-income communities, then we have to manage our transit, our transportation. Like you said, somebody has to be the first, right? You say that, and I agree with that. So we need someone to be the first to actually believe in this vision of this transit-oriented development. You cannot say that it hasn't worked. I don't think it's going to work now, but we wanted it to work. That's the direction we're going. So we are looking for the developer actually believe in that vision, and I think the council should make that to facilitate that kind of development to occur. Otherwise, we're just seeing all those car-centered development scattered along this corridor. We'll never get a chance to make that happen. So I feel very, very strongly in that part with regard to affordable housing. I think that, of course, I think I would well, if it's possible, that have new units. But I also heard actually a lot of feedback from our public housing residents, and they're saying that their units need to be refurbished, or they're like the structure issues. So I'm kind of open to that option as well. So I would prefer to have new units to be added in our affordable housing supply. But if that's the specialty the developer has, I think I'm open to other options as well.
Mr. Parker, then Ms. Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to be too repetitive. I agree with most of what's been said so far. I mean, basically, this building, not only is it a Texas donut, but it's a double donut. And it is, basically exactly the kind of building that we have spent, I don't know, 5 or so years trying to figure out how not to get in Blue Hill. And now, it's popping up on MLK. I mean, it's 400 feet. In Blue Hill, we establish standards that get things below 400 feet. So there, in terms of the massing, we talked about somebody's got to be first, but our flume is pretty clear that we want 4 floors at street, not 6. It seems to do very, stoops can be kind of cute, particularly when you've got a neighborhood full of them rather than a block full of them. But it certainly does little to activate the street, unless it's Sesame Street. There's just very little about the architecture of this building, that inspires me. I think it relates poorly at the back end, or whatever you want to call the Isley end, to the neighborhoods. I mean, 5 or 6 stories butting up against, 1-story or 2-story homes. There's just really, one of the things we call for in the flume is transition to neighborhoods. And this doesn't do that. I mean, it just is this fortress built, abutting a low rise, low density, in part historic neighborhood. And, other than the little park, which is, I guess, better than nothing, but it offers no, in exchange for potentially increasing traffic, in exchange for being potentially unsightly, it offers nothing to the neighbors in the neighborhood. You said it's a secured building, visitors, by appointment only. So it just strikes me, the wrong scale. I personally, and I may not be in alignment with all of my colleagues on this, but I personally don't particularly mind this area for students. I think, we have to have, we're going to do it somewhere but this building, I mean, the scale of this building is just, to me, way out of sync with with even the new flume. So, if you're going to be first, at least follow the flume as it's written. So in terms of affordable housing, I mean, I think you get my gist. I think, it's not permeable to the neighborhood. And, in terms of affordable housing, it really comes down to the devil's in the details. I would like new units, but how many new units are you actually willing to sponsor? I mean, I would consider renovations but how many are you going to renovate, and how much is that at, what is the cash contribution there? So until I have more details about what, talking about it conceptually, that, I'm not really able to give you much guidance until I see some hard numbers. So I think that's all I have for now.
Ms. Ryan?
So yeah, I think I'm in agreement with my fellow council members. And thank you for bringing this forward. We're always happy to see proposals, but I don't find that this project is meeting any of our significant town goals of environmental, economic development, missing middle housing, or transit-oriented development. It's just missing the mark on all those. We've talked about the idea of, trying to grow our downtown out of its little constrained linear format right now. And there's a big opportunity cost for the town to let that valuable land go to student housing complexes. While we're talking about student housing, I heartily echo Ms. Anderson's comments about our need to reopen that conversation with the town to see what we think our needs are, to talk to the university. But there's a cost to the town to subsidize the university's growth in students. And I don't think that it's our job necessarily to do that. They're an important part of our community, but there's a cost to that for us. So we need to think about that real carefully. As Ms. Gu mentioned, using a piece of land on the BRT line right near downtown to build 400 parking spaces for students at a place they can walk to campus just makes no sense to me. That's not consistent with any of the development goals that we have. I agree with Mr. Parker that we have been trying to fight just this kind of massing in Blue Hill for years. The 400-foot facade is almost as long as the long side of the Berkshire that faces Great Harvest. There's no permeability in the middle. There are other big complexes in the area, but they don't have their long side right up on front of MLK. They're back in, or they have their short side facing. So it's a very, very different feel. We've talked about scale problems, and adding architecture doesn't solve scale problems. It's really essentially a massing issue and a size issue. So colors and material changes aren't going to solve that for us. It's really much more essential. So again, I think that this is not the right project for the town, but I know you want us to comment on the affordable housing. So I like the Habitat or partnering with another one of our partners the best. I think, I don't know all the details, but I think Ms. Anderson is probably right. We have a lot of other options for renovating our public housing, which we don't have for some other things. So that would not be a favorite of mine. Student affordable housing would be a benefit to the university. It is not a town benefit. So that would not be on my list. And payment in lieu would not be on my list. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you guys have covered a lot of ground here, so I don't think I have a whole lot to add. I am in agreement with a lot of the comments I've heard from the council. I will say I applaud the concept of connectivity to neighborhood, but the goal was to help the neighborhood, not to really take advantage of the neighborhood. And I think any kind of access of cars coming and going, people coming and going at that density back into the north side neighborhood would not be of interest at all. I agree that we need to take a hard look at how much student housing we actually need in town. This would be one of the corridors we said we wanted on, but I'm in agreement that this project is just so large on this property and backs up to a neighborhood. But there's also a townhouse neighborhood on the other side and our affordable housing senior neighborhood on the other side. And I don't know if you've had conversations with them, but we need something that works with them. And I'm not convinced that a student housing project of this size and scale, we've had other concerns with noise and issues of things like that next to neighborhoods, as Mr. Nguyen was suggesting. It's hard because this is, like you said, the first one out of the gate, and I don't think it's what any of us were expecting. We really worked hard on things like massing and scale and design, and we were very specific about heights and transitions to neighborhoods. So I think you have a lot more work to uncover. I am supportive of alternative affordable housing programs like partnering with a Habitat or a CASA or whomever's, or empowerment, whoever's under doing those developments, because it's sort of, I felt like the rehabbing our public housing was just a different form of payment in lieu. So that concerns me. While I want to do some rehabbing of our public housing, we have plans and a process, but I do think it's something to look at. We have to be more creative with affordable housing. And I called Habitat just to ask, what would a sponsorship look like? And it's in the neighborhood of $80,000 a unit. That's what they asked for donations for a sponsor of a townhome or a home, and they fundraise for the infrastructure and stuff. So how many units that equates to, and I'm sure Mr. Valentine's even more familiar with this, but that's kind of the difference. Is it costs about $180,000 or $200,000 to build an apartment, but a Habitat home sponsorship in order to get one going would be a direct benefit. So anyway, I don't know if you need me to sum up all the comments you've heard. I've seen you've been taking notes, but I'm hearing questions about student housing versus family housing versus some commercial component in this area. You're hearing a lot about transit-oriented development, and do we really need this much parking right there when we have other options for parking? And we know the future is going to be that people aren't going to be bringing their own cars just for storage. There's going to be autonomous vehicles and more zip cars and more other kinds, but our transit is so good to get you to those places. You've heard the scale, the looming of it, the wanting more buffers, the wanting to connect with the neighborhood in a more positive experience, and the transition physically to the neighborhoods that it surrounds. So were there questions back that the developer was unclear on from council comments?
I think that was clear, Madam Mayor. One thing that I do want to mention is you might take another look at the flume, because there is no transition zone shown on this particular side of MLK in the flume like there is on the Hillsborough Street side.
Okay.
That was very clear in flume on the Hillsborough Street side, but not on this side.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. We'll ask our staff to take a look at that, because I'm sure we're going to have and we already actually do have another proposal for long MLK. So we need to know if that was a purposeful omission or it was something that was overlooked. So we'll need to see with that.
And that's the only reason I mentioned that is that's a major driver in the concept that you saw today, was the fact that there was no transition zone shown. And so, with allowing eight-story buildings without a transition, that's basically what you saw. Now, admittedly, we didn't have a full 4-story front on MLK. That we could probably resolve, but we cannot resolve lowering the building on all sides to match the buildings that are around it. There's just no way to do that and make this project go unless somebody came in and purchased like the whole block or half the block. Then there might be the ability to do some of the things that we've been hearing, but we do appreciate your comments. I think you were very clear. Thank you very much. I don't know if any of our other team members have other closing comments, but perhaps that summarizes where we are.
Okay. All right.
And move R12.
Our 12 is just to submit our comments. So yes. It's been moved by Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Stegman. Any comments that haven't been shared by council? All right, roll call vote, please. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Boyncy.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Thank you very much. All right. We appreciate everyone who applies for our advisory boards. We have more positions becoming available. We're taking applications for all our boards. All of our boards have openings as we stagger the rotations and the appointments to get ready for the next season starting at the end of June. So we encourage people to apply and to keep applying. And on that note, this evening, hang on, the council has appointed Nakima Santos to the Community Policing Advisory Committee this evening. So thank you for that. And again, please keep applying. We have lots of positions out there. I want to remind council that we do have a work session next week on Wednesday, Ms. Ryan's birthday. She's purposely wanted us to hold a work session on her birthday so that you can blame her for this edition. So that is the end of our meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Be safe.
Told you, Mr. Parker, going to get out of here in a good time.
Good night.